Folks, I would love to have a clever open for you, but all I can say is it's college football. And what a day, what a night of college football. My goodness, it started on Friday night, of course, for many of you who joined us post-game after Stanford came back and made that ridiculous comeback that nobody saw coming, 29-0 down. Welcome into the voice of college football, and a Saturday that included North Carolina defeated Miami. North Carolina looks like they are for real, at least in the ACC. Maybe they can challenge Florida State and the powers that be. Louisville knocked off tonight, of course, by Pitt. And if you want to check out my instant analysis that I just posted on Miami and North Carolina, actually, it's in the process of posting right now. I have some strong words to say for Mario Cristobal that I may repeat here in just a minute, just because it's still not off my chest. All right, Oregon and Washington. That was supposed to be the game of the day. It was the game of the day. That was a hell of a game. My goodness, it was unbelievable, but it was just basically, it wasn't like incredibly crazy, wacky, like crazy stuff happened. It was just two really good teams. It was basically this. It was what we all anticipated it to be. The two best offenses, not necessarily the two best offenses in the country, maybe the two best in the country, but certainly the two best on one field. And an important game to the Pac-12, an important game in terms of college football playoff positioning, a Heisman Trophy possibly on the line, and then just entertainment. That's just college football. Great environment, rivalry that a lot of people don't know about. This is a full of hate rivalry. Washington, Oregon. These guys don't like each other. Tennessee with a big win against Texas A&M. That probably, in a sense, for it being on CBS at 3:30 Eastern, with probably 5 or 6 million people watching it just on television, probably went under the radar about as much as the CBS spotlight game could. UCLA, Oregon State, I believe the Beavers took care of the Bruins. I got very busy tonight with other games, but I had my eye on it. Last I saw, Beavs up 20 by 12 points. And then, of course, we got to talk Notre Dame and USC. For all you people out there that throw around the term trash and sucks all the time, it's the most ridiculous crap. It's unbelievable. First of all, if all of us were as good at our jobs individually as these players and coaches are, and had risen to the place in our industry as they have, yeah. How would you like somebody following you around at work saying, you suck, you're trash? Okay, yes, there are some teams, and I mean this relatively, in a relative sense, they suck. Indiana sucks. Vanderbilt sucks. I think we all get that. But and that's, again, no disrespect to the student athletes and the coaches. They're really good at what they do. But in the grand scheme of things, compared to everyone else, somebody's got to lose the games, and those teams suck by comparison. But my goodness, I've heard this for the last couple weeks about Notre Dame. They suck. They're trash. People are idiots for making those kind of comments. Did you see Notre Dame tonight? And then to make the relay transitive property that so-and-so, they suck and they're trash because they lost to them or they barely beat them. Okay. I'm not selling Notre Dame as a national championship contender. I'm not selling them as a great team. I'm selling them as a very talented team and a team that got off the deck after 3 very difficult primetime games against 3 very good opponents, 1 elite opponent, and 2 really good teams the last 2 weeks. And they got off the deck to take on this USC team and what is considered to be the best player in the nation. I kind of hate that tag as well because they play different positions. He's the best quarterback in the nation, although Michael Penix may have something to say about that. And they just ran roughshod over USC. Destroyed them. Destroyed them. Who looked like the more athletic, faster team in South Bend tonight? Like, it's not like that turned into a quagmire of mud and slop, and USC, just their athletes couldn't get their tracking and their footing, and it was a Notre Dame kind of night, and they won this ugly game. No. They made plays in space, and USC's defense is a mess. And I know the offense had problems tonight, and we take for granted the USC offense. We just check it off as, well, the offense is going to score 45 points on anyone because they've got everything, and they got the best player. They got all these toys on the outside, and the offensive line we don't even think about. But they've got issues along the offensive line against a front like Notre Dame. They have issues. Caleb Williams, sometimes maybe it is a detriment to be that good and to think you can do anything. And I think maybe Caleb Williams did that tonight. Just thought he could do anything and throw the ball anywhere, and it's just going to work out. That Notre Dame team tonight, especially the defense, and Jason Garrett said it. I've said it a number of times, not to the extent that he did. I've been saying it for the last 4 years, that Sam Hartman is an elite downfield thrower. Jason Garrett took it to the level that Sam Hartman is the best deep ball thrower he's ever seen in college. Notre Dame took it to USC. Impressive showing. USC hasn't really played a good football game the entire season. The games that they played well were against the very worst teams in the sport. All right, what else is going on? Ohio State and Michigan started out the day. They were dominant. That Ohio State effort against Purdue, I know Purdue's not that good, but still, if you compare the Purdue results and their performance against other teams, what Ohio State did to them today, they completely dismantled them. They ran and passed and did whatever they wanted. They could have scored 60. They could add 700 yards total offense. Their defense clamped down on Purdue. Forget it. Michigan got off to a slow start. Indiana actually made some plays. Should have been up 14-0. Then Michigan took control. They dominated. Yes. Maybe the team that has come back from the dead more than any team across America that maybe people aren't paying attention to is in the Big 12, and their name is Oklahoma State, and their coach has a mullet. They beat Kansas after they beat Kansas State last week, and they've got some life in the Big 12. And they've got dates coming up with Texas and Oklahoma State, so they can do something about it. In the SEC, we hope and pray that Brock Bowers is fine. There was a list of injuries today across college football. We will just mention that one to start. Brock Bowers against Vandy. Georgia wins. But we don't have an update necessarily on Brock Bowers, and probably won't for a few days. That usually doesn't come out until the coaches' news conference on Monday or Tuesday, unless there has to be some kind of emergency surgery. Elsewhere in the SEC, Jaden Daniels into LSU put up 48 on Auburn, and that's not easy to do. Auburn's got a good defense, so that's an impressive showing out of LSU. Bama, Arkansas. Hogs took the Tide to the limit, but Bama did what a vintage Bama team does in the final 5 minutes. They ran the ball down their throats for the final 5 minutes. Jalen Milroe made some nice passes, only completed 10 of 21, but man, when it comes to chucking it downfield, I know that was not a great Bama performance against a marginal at best Arkansas team, but still, I think it's one of those games that I check the boxes in regards to, okay, Bama just kind of went through the motions, got through it, won the game. I think this team is going to be awfully tough to deal with in November. All right, let's take your calls here at the Voice of College Football. Remember, the Amazon links in the description section of all the videos, including this one. This is what you might want to do tonight while you're listening to the show. Shop on Amazon. Shop on Amazon while you're listening to the show. Grab the link that we provide. It gives you the same shopping experience. Doesn't cost you a penny. All right. If you want to go to a football game coming up here soon and you need some tickets, you want a few bucks off, you grab ticketsmarter.com. or go to the Ticket Smarter app and you use our promo code that we will display here in just a second. I've been talking all day. Display in just a second. Ticketsmarter.com, promo code BIG, big, and you get $10 off a purchase of at least $100 and $20 off of a purchase of at least $300 using the promo code BIG20. You want to catch us on Discord as well. You want to be on our Discord link, talking college football 24/7, 365. The way to do that is you go to the front page here, YouTube membership. You get your YouTube membership here, or you go to patreon.com/MarkRogersTV. You get my picks, which I'm not going to sell as anything phenomenal today. I think I got kind of unlucky actually, but you know how that works. Bad beats go both ways. Haven't tallied up the record, but well in the green for the season. Well into the green. It's only $3 to $5 a month, Patreon and YouTube as well. All right, let's get to the calls. Jeffrey on the line. Jeffrey, what's going on tonight?
I'm doing really good, Mark. I have no idea what just happened today with all the results. Basically, almost every game that I would have thought the winner of the game would be, like the most likeliest winners, it just didn't go the way that we were expecting. Not in every case. There were a few, like you said, Alabama getting the job done versus Arkansas. They were up, but then they kind of gave it away, but, they pulled it out. That was a good win. My family was happy about that. And then obviously Ohio State and Michigan, like you said, getting the job done as well versus Purdue and Indiana, blowing them out. Indiana was up 7-0. It felt like a Lee Corso moment all over again. Take a picture, and then it all fell apart. But
they should have been up 14-0.
Yeah, it was crazy. I was actually happy for Indiana. I was like, yay, they're doing better. But nah, hopefully they'll play better against Rutgers next week. But some of these results, Mark, I just cannot believe happened. Arizona beating Washington State 44-6. Like you talked about Oklahoma State, one of the teams people aren't paying attention. Arizona is another one. Washington State beat Oregon State, and we're thinking that they're pretty good. They suffer a tough loss against UCLA on the road. That's not a bad loss. But then you turn back around and you get destroyed on your own field against the Arizona Wildcats, 44-6. Absolutely unbelievable. I don't know what you think about that result.
I was surprised. What can I say? I was surprised. I thought Washington State would cover. They've been rock solid this year. They had that tremendous game against Oregon State. That's the highlight of the year. They beat Wisconsin, which was a nice win at the time. And like you say, the UCLA game, UCLA's defense is really good. I thought that was a step back, but not significantly. Two good teams going at it. And like we talk about all the time, throw out the top 4 or 5 teams in the country. After that, the next 40 can all win games against each other. I'm sure you're going to get to Louisville and Pitt. Did that surprise me? No, it didn't surprise me because, again, I've been watching college football for too long. Like, I almost picked it to happen just because I thought, well, Louisville's probably in that position where they're going to come down from this Notre Dame game. But do I think Pitt's better than Louisville? No, they just happen to win the game tonight.
See, that's the thing right there. You got to the point that I was wanting to make. You just said, is Pitt better than Louisville? No. Is Louisville better than Notre Dame? No. That's not how it works. Louisville beat Notre Dame, and that was a great win. But Louisville's not better than Notre Dame because you saw what Notre Dame can do. And is USC suddenly just completely abysmal and they're 30 points worse than Notre Dame? No, that's not the fact either. But USC played absolutely horrible on defense, not a surprise. But then their offense decided to play bad as well. And we've said it before. I told Tony and Tim earlier in the season that USC was going to struggle to win out or even go with just one loss because the offense has to play elite basically every game for them to win. And finally, when it did not, and Caleb Williams has multiple interceptions, he's getting rushed, he's getting sacked left and right, and they lose because their defense can't bail them out. Like Alabama's defense can bail them out when they're not playing that well. USC can't do that. If they do not have an elite offensive performance, they will not win against a quality opponent. It's just the way that it is. If Arizona and Colorado were better, which Arizona, again, maybe they are. But who knows? They could fall back there and lose next week. I don't even know who they play. But these teams are all over the place. The results are all over the place. But definitely, you have to be good on both sides of the ball consistently to win consistently in college football. Because if you just are not, you don't have a lot of depth. Because that's like the thing with like a team like Louisville. They don't have a lot of depth. They've got some good players, but they played their best against Notre Dame. Turned back around and played against Pitt, and they played awful. And like I told you before, as you remember, Louisville barely beat NC State, barely beat Indiana, and barely beat Georgia Tech. 3 teams that are not that great. Louisville was a team that got by because of the schedule, and then it finally caught up to them. Does it mean that they're awful? No, but they're not the 14th best team in college football. That's for sure. It's just if they finally played a game where it caught up to them and they didn't win. But I think this week in college football, for me, just looking at the results all over the place, you look at like a TCU BYU game. I picked BYU. I'm like, TCU's playing awful. They're not that good. And BYU keyed slow. What the world happened in that game? You've got TCU winning by 30. And TCU's quarterback looking like Max Duggan out there. It's unbelievable. And then you've got Illinois, the worst team in the Big Ten, beats Maryland. Maryland, the team that was supposed to be the 4th best team in the Big. What happened? What happened this week? I love it. I mean, it was awesome. It made my picks all crazy. I got probably more than 50% of the games wrong. But again, I don't even know what to make of it. Just teams that you expect to be better than other teams did not take care of business this week at all. Iowa beat Wisconsin. Wasn't expecting that either. That's not as big of a shock, but still, Wisconsin supposed to be better on offense by far. They scored 6 against that vaunted defense. So I don't know.
I truly think that we can count from week to week that Alabama, I'm not saying these teams are perfect by any stretch. They have flaws, but they are complete teams, meaning they are consistently, they show up and they will be top 5 to 10 teams in the country every week. Alabama, Michigan, Ohio State, Georgia, probably Florida State. I know they had the BC game. I'm not saying that these teams are incapable of a downer, but they are complete teams. Oregon and Washington probably in that category, leaning obviously heavily on the offense more so than the defense. Oklahoma, Texas, those are your teams. And then, you know, it sounds ridiculous to say, but Duke is a really good team. They're showing up and they're giving us a pretty consistent performance every week. Think about Duke. How close is Duke? They are a 4th and 16 play against Notre Dame, of them being undefeated and being talked about a whole lot more.
I agree. And I remember last week or 2 weeks ago when people were saying in chat that Louisville and Kentucky were legit because they were both undefeated. I felt, in my opinion, that Florida State, North Carolina, even Miami, when they play like it, but not right now, but when they play like it, Duke and even Clemson were better than Louisville. But that's just the way I felt. I felt that all those teams are better than Louisville. Does it mean that Louisville can't beat those teams? No, because they beat Notre Dame, a team that's clearly better than Louisville. Again, that's not how it works. I just think that those teams are better than Louisville. Kentucky, I can't say exactly off the top of my head how many SEC teams I feel, in my opinion, are better than Kentucky. But after they beat Florida, a terrible road team, which I'll get to them in a sec, you got Kentucky. They get blown out against Georgia after the Florida win, and then they lose on their own field to Missouri, which is not a bad team this year. Missouri legitimately is decent this season, or really decently good. I don't even know what you want to say, what word, what adjective. They're a good team. But that was a bad loss for Kentucky. And now Kentucky, Louisville, off the radar. No one's talking about them anymore. But, I mean, like I said, with these results are wacky. I mean, I literally, the one result that I would say I was like guaranteed would happen. Florida, not going to win on the road this week. No chance, because they never went on the road. And they pull, I know South Carolina's not that great. Like when North Carolina beat, oh, that's a great win for the Tars. Now it's like, who's North Carolina beat? They've beaten nobody. South Carolina's terrible. And it's like, well, then Florida, I'm like, they're not going to beat South Carolina. And then they do, 41-39. So the one result that I thought for sure would happen, Florida losing on the road like normal, and they went on the road. I don't know how happy it's going to make George in the chat if he is in here, but still, that's a good win for Florida. Now I can maybe pick you on the road again. But to me, the only two results that legitimately made me happy today, just because they went how I expected them to, because I picked them to win. And they were great games, one for me and one for just college football. One was North Carolina. Got the hat on. They were great against Miami today. Both sides of the ball. Now, that doesn't mean North Carolina won't lose next week. They could, because that's what college football is teaching us. They could just blow it, and I'll be honest saying North Carolina's in the toilet. But right now, great win, feeling really good. Drake May's playing better. Defense is good enough. But the Oregon-Washington game, that was the game, like, by far, no matter what the crazy results that happened, it was the best game of the day because of the fact two teams that we both expected to play a great game played a great game, and that no matter who won the game, it wasn't a surprise to anybody. Because I saw a lot of people picking Oregon, actually. More people. I don't know who picked them more, but I picked Washington. I went with Michael Penix from IU. I'm like, he's going to get it done, and he got his Heisman moment. I'm not saying he's going to win the Heisman, but what a drive. What a game. I was pulling for both teams. Like, literally, I was pulling for Nix. I was pulling for Penix. A little bit more for Penix just because he's from IU and his injuries, and it's just a great, story for him to bounce back and have the success. It's a great story because, 2 ACLs and a broken collarbone. A lot of people wouldn't recover from that. But what a game, and just both teams playing how we thought that they would. Sometimes that's better than the wackiness.
Yeah, that was the anticipated game of the day, and that was maybe the only predictable thing that we could count on, and it came through, that Washington and Oregon. And like you, I just wanted to see a great game, and it did not disappoint. And when I said off the top that it wasn't crazy, wacky, remarkable, it's just because all the great plays and the drama and the back and forth was expected, and it delivered. And that's the type game that, sure, you credit the winner, you give them more street cred, you rank them higher, you do all those things. And then the loser, you have to back them up in the rankings, and you have to account for the win and the loss. But you come away from that game, especially considering Oregon lost its 2 starting corners in the second half. They were playing in Seattle. Then you come away thinking, I don't know who the better team is. I think that if those two teams got together 10 times, they would play. I wouldn't predict necessarily who would win the games, except it would probably be 5-5, but that almost every game would be that game. Just like when they played last year. It was almost the exact same game as what we saw today. When they played last year in Eugene, it came down to the last possession. It was like a 38-35 game. There you go. That's what those two teams are. That's how close they are, and that's how similar they are.
Yeah, and they played a heck of a game. And, you look at the fact that Oregon ran the ball better, than Washington throughout the entire game. And I thought that was going to be the difference. But Washington's defense on the last drive was able to, hold them down. But it was just, like you said, not crazy or anything, but just the type of game that everyone was expecting. Like I said, it doesn't take anything away from the other games, because there were some fantastic games today, and the results, like I said, were all over the place. But all I know is that my predictions are going down the drain. I don't even know what. I'm probably at like 55%. I was hovering around 60, but I'm getting in the 50s now. This was an awful week in the rain. Like Kansas State, Texas Tech, no one really cares about that game. But I went Texas Tech. I'm like, Kansas State just lost to Oklahoma State. They're gonna win. They're gonna be able to. They're not going to win. I didn't think that they were going to be able to do it. And then they turn around and win against Texas Tech. I thought Texas Tech would get the win. And then you had Kansas, Oklahoma State. I gave Kansas the dub in my mind because I thought they'd do it, and then they lose. So it's like the Big 12. Don't predict the Big 12 at all, because you're going to get it wrong. Those bottom teams, the middle of the pack to the bottom of the Big 12 are absolutely insane. Like I said, this was a fantastic day. I usually come on actually having more ideas and general thoughts of what I want to talk about, but this whole weekend just had me going from noon to now. Like, it started with Stanford, Colorado, and I haven't even talked about that because I know there's people behind me. So last couple things, that game, unbelievable. Stanford breaking history for their school, like stuff they didn't even do in the Jim Harbaugh or David Shaw era of Stanford. You've got a receiver that catches 294 yards in the game. That one that he caught off Travis Hunter's helmet was insane. And then I just can't believe that game. They come back from 29 down, 29-0. Like, I almost turned it off, went to bed. Like, it was a blowout. I'm like, oh, and then I check it. It's like 29-22. I'm like, I'm invested now. And then they come back and win.
It was phenomenal. It was incredible. Now, I will say, a lot of the incredible things that Stanford accomplished that you just alluded to, they didn't accomplish during those eras because they didn't need to.
I agree.
That's the only difference. They didn't need to come back from 29-0, and they didn't need to like have a receiver catch 300 yards in receiving because they had running backs going for 150 yards. But yes, I totally am with you. That was just phenomenal. It was exciting. It was fun. And just to see Stanford, they get beaten down and they've been so bad and people are ignoring them and making fun of them, and then nobody goes to the games. And to go to Colorado and do that when the place is just packed and raucous, and to pull that off, just think about the psychology of getting your brains beat in every week. And then you're down 29-0 in a hostile environment. The psychology just has to be working against you. Like, well, this is what happens every week. And for those guys to pull that together and to put that kind of comeback together, it was truly remarkable. Good for them.
It was. I mean, Stanford lost to Sacramento State, where Troy Taylor was coaching, which was an abysmal loss. And then you turn around and beat Colorado, and USC only beat Colorado by 7 without Travis Hunter. Like, I've seen a lot of people talk about, what if Travis Hunter was in? USC would have lost. It wouldn't surprise me. It really wouldn't at this point. I mean,
the more I see of USC and them playing against Arizona State, Arizona, and now tonight, yeah.
I'd love to see Indiana play them. Give Indiana USC, and let's see if they could sling it down the field. Because if Stanford could do it against Colorado and Colorado could do it against USC, maybe Indiana could do it.
I've got a quick Indiana question for you before I need to take these other calls. So Taven Jackson starts the game. They move the ball down the field. He throws a pick. Yeah, this was before the touchdown. They could have had another touchdown. They move the ball down the field. He's got an open receiver like the 2-yard line. He misses him, overthrows him. It gets picked, deflected, and picked. Then they bring in Brendan Sorsby after that. Is that the game plan all along, or did they just respond to that pick?
My brain, I would be surprised, to be honest, about, what Tom Allen said after the game if all these other results didn't happen today. But today was so crazy that what Tom Allen said didn't even blow my mind. But it would have normally. He said basically that the game plan was to play both. He was like, we didn't really know which quarterback, I guess, was, better suited to help us win the game. So this isn't exact words, but paraphrase, basically being a little more blunt. And so we decided to go with Jackson and Sorsby to see which one would work out better. And it's like literally the players after the game were like, we were confused because we didn't know which quarterback was going to come out on which drive. If you've got players saying that they're confused, then Tom Allen, you're making it too complicated. You're playing Michigan. You've got to go with one guy and hope and pray that you have a shot. And you did for the first quarter. And then it all went downhill from there. And against Rutgers, at this point, just throw in Dexter Williams because he was questionable for this game. And Tom Allen said that Dexter Williams actually could have played in an emergency. And I'm like, what do you mean? That was an emergency. You're getting obliterated 52-7. That's an emergency. But, yeah, maybe throw in Dexter Williams. But, yeah, Indiana's a mess because they just can't figure out what they're doing right now. I mean, you got to know what you're doing if you want to win. So, obviously, you're not going to beat Michigan anyway. But if they want to beat Rutgers, Illinois, Purdue, they got to get the quarterback situation figured out. So we'll see if they go with Dexter Williams, Taven Jackson, or Brendan Sorsby next week. But as of now, I have no idea which quarterback they're going to go with. But I will part with this to say, like and subscribe, everybody, to Mark Rogers as the voice of college football. He works hard, especially on every Saturday, doing instant analysis and all these lives. It's crazy, but it's definitely worth talking, especially tonight with college football. There was some crazy results, and I still can't make sense of it.
Well, Jeffrey, good to see you, and we'll catch you soon, and we appreciate it, sir.
You too. Have a great night, Mark.
All right, let's keep it moving here at the voice of college football. Reasonable Gump's on the line. Reasonable Gump, hang on right there. This guy used to call me every Saturday night. I thought he had lost my number, but here he is. Can't wait to talk to him. But before we do that real quick, let's honor these super chats. Daniel, thank you so much for the contribution as a member for the last 6 months. hit the like button. It's easy to do. Even if you don't like me, don't agree with me, whatever, if you enjoy the discussion here at the Voice of College Football, hit the like button, please. It's easy to do. All right. We also have a contribution coming in from Mike. Mike, thank you so much for that. Greatly appreciated. And also then we've got a comment coming in from Nick. Nick, thank you for the contribution. All right. Nick says, watching Michigan spank the Fighting Tom Allens was great. Can't get enough of that dude getting destroyed on national TV. Beautiful maize and blue baby. That beatdown was an excellent afternoon delight. Okay. I got to say, if the language became a little bit more graphic and specific than that, I didn't know where we were going. Okay. We've got spanking and some other things there that I gotcha there. We've got an afternoon delight and okay, Nick. We appreciate your contribution, Nick. You know that. So thanks for being here. And I know you love your Michigan football team that beat up on poor Indiana today. All right, let's hit the phone lines. We got a Reasonable Gump on the line.
Oh, man, I'm sorry. I'm still reading Nick's comment. It is
I don't know.
one of the most glorious ones I've seen on here. Hey, Mark, how are you doing tonight?
I am doing just fine. How are you?
I'm doing okay. Hey, man, I told you, what is it, probably a little over a month ago, last time I called in, that had Alabama actually found a way to win that Texas A&M game, I would come back on here and have my words thrown back at me. Well, I'm a little late. I'm about a week late, but here I am. And for anyone who doesn't know, I said that I saw absolutely no way that Alabama could go into College Station with Jalen Milroe as quarterback and find a way to win that.
Your coach did his best to throw that away with a few play calls at the end of the game, a few time management decisions, but they still got it done.
They still got it done. After watching this tonight, here's a segue into this week now. I'm going to say that every single one of my criticisms, with the possible exception of how bad Jalen Milroe is, he might be a little better than I thought, they're still all been proven out. This is not a good Alabama team. This team that played Arkansas today would not have beaten Texas A&M last week, so I'm not really sure what happened there. I think that's more of a reflection on Jimbo Fisher not knowing what he's doing, of not being able to capitalize on that game. But, yeah, hey, I was totally wrong about that. What I am still, I think, right about is this Alabama team, even though it's bad, it can probably still win the West. I mean, since
it can still win the SEC.
Comment, sorry?
It can still win the SEC. And I'm not just talking mathematically. Of course they can. I'm talking about practically, literally, they can win the SEC.
Practically, this team, you think has more than a kicking chance against Georgia?
Yes.
Because that would be what you'd have to do.
Yeah.
All right.
They do.
All right. Oh, so
I'm going to stay with my preseason pick that this team's going to play in the national championship game.
And who did you pick them to play, if I might ask?
Ohio State.
Okay. And who were the other two teams?
Michigan and it's a great question. I'm going to have to look it up. Maybe Texas.
It don't really matter. I was just curious when you said that. So you kind of think that you kind of predicted Ohio State and Michigan kind of doing the same thing they did last year?
Yeah, to a certain extent.
I actually think that the way the landscape's looking this year, it looks to me like it's going to be pretty hard for even Alabama or Georgia to do that. Like if Georgia went 12-0, and like you said, they did manage to lose to Bama, I'm actually thinking they may miss it this time because it looks like the field is so even. I think they're just going to take a bunch of one-loss or undefeated conference champions over from around the country. So they may just leave all the runners-up out.
And if you've noticed, the SEC's down, and if the committee's doing its job, then they're going to select the best resumes and not go with their supposed eyeball test, I guess, what they would consider to be an eyeball test that the SEC is still the best conference. I don't know.
I don't think anyone with a brain could be watching that this year and think that. But hey, all right, I got two teams I want to hit on. One of mine is still actually they're both mine, but I'm still doing it right now. Then I'm gonna hit the other team in just a second. Okay, so what you said to open this stream about Notre Dame and USC was the perfect description of that. Notre Dame took a good team. We don't know how great USC is, but they're a good team. Okay. It was like a good team that was undefeated and was still, I mean, not red hot, but they were still hot. They had the best quarterback in the country and supposedly had the best offense in the country. And they just demolished them. They beat them every quarter at every turn. It wasn't, 28-20 doesn't even tell the full story. It's kind of like when Alabama beat Notre Dame, I think, like by 4 scores. It was 28-0 at halftime in 2012, and then we let them score 2 more touchdowns in the second half. But it didn't matter. Like the game was over at halftime.
In my mind, and I cannot emphasize this enough, when Notre Dame fans at times are a bit delusional about that game. In my mind, it was like 70-0.
Right.
It just didn't matter.
It just took a good team and just destroyed them. Okay, this is my problem right now. Marcus Freeman has been there 2 years. Okay, this is not even a full 2 years. This is his second year.
Yep.
He's got some talent. You know, Notre Dame is not devoid of talent, but their roster if we're being honest, their roster cannot hold the jockstrap of Alabama's roster, talent-wise. Just pure talent. They're playing better. They're a better team by a mile. But talent-wise, look at what he's working with. And he's been there a year and a half. This Nick Saban has been here for 16, 17 years. When is the last time you've seen an Alabama team do that to a good team? A team of USC's caliber? You're going to have to go back 3 years to 2020 when they basically did it to everybody.
Yeah.
This is my problem right now. You're telling me that Marcus Freeman can get his guys, who, by the way, Notre Dame was in a downward spot. I mean, they lost any path to the college football playoff. You know, so it's easy to say that, hey, that if there's ever a time that they should be sort of down on themselves and maybe think they don't have much to play for, this would be it. They take an undefeated USC team and destroy them. And you're telling me Nick Saban can't get his guys to do that to anyone for the last 3 years? That's my problem right now. This team, this was after coming off that Texas A&M win, which I didn't think we were going to get. I didn't think we could get. A lot of people didn't think we were going to get that. Just it seemed like that was written for Texas A&M to win that. It's at College Station. Alabama's been just fumbling around, throwing interceptions. Doesn't look good anytime. They threw the ball like 9 times against Mississippi State. And then we got that. I was like, okay, well, you know what? That was your chance. That was your chance to finish off Alabama right there. Could have ended the season for them. But you didn't do it. I'm like, okay, maybe this is it. Maybe we got Arkansas coming at home, and we can get a big win, which we haven't had in so long. And by the way, this isn't even that great of an Arkansas team. They lost the last 4 games. Now they've lost the last 5 games. And you're telling me all we can do is win by a field goal? This is the problem I'm having.
Nothing you're saying is untrue. I cannot in any way invalidate anything that you just stated, even though I think it's a bit overstated. It is all the truth. However, if Alabama was going to play Notre Dame next Saturday, I would probably pick Alabama to win. Well,
I wouldn't, but I also picked them to lose against Texas A&M. So there goes. That's how much what my insight would be worth. But
there is something
I've also not seen Notre Dame play like that.
Opponent and down to your opponent. That does happen.
True, but still 3 years with the best, 2 of them with the best quarterback in the country.
Yes.
And we haven't beaten the brakes off a great team like that
However, the results, yes, you stumbled around and got by the likes of LSU when they were down and Auburn when they were down and all those games that you just kind of made your way past. I get that, but those 2 seasons did end up okay. At the very worst, 11-2, you win the Sugar Bowl and finish in the top 5 in the country. And the other one, you have a lead in the national championship game with 4 or 5 minutes left to play.
Yeah. And like you just told me, I can't disagree with anything you said.
Without your 2 best receivers.
No. I'm not falling into that trap. No, I do not.
Still, you didn't have your 2 best receivers.
No. Sorry, I don't play the injury excuse game.
Well, I'm not making an excuse. I'm stating facts. You did not have your 2 starting receivers. Is that a factual statement?
I don't even remember. I know the guy we got from Ohio State.
Well, I remember. That's why I'm stating it.
Who was the second guy?
John Mechie did not play in the playoffs at all. He caught like 95 passes that year. He's playing in the NFL. Jameson Williams got hurt sometime in the second quarter against Georgia after he made a huge reception. And it
was an underthrown pass from Bryce Young, right?
Yes. And it's not a situation in which Alabama then, so it's one thing, and we see it all the time with elite programs, guys go down and then their replacements are just about as good as they are. No, there was a significant drop off. Your receivers let you down in the second half of that national championship game.
But at the end of the day, the fact of the matter is we didn't have anyone trained to take those spots.
Yeah.
And that proved out, by the way, last year and this, although it looks like Jermaine Burton's coming on strong this year. But anyway, no. Any Georgia fans out there, I'm not taking the bait. I'm not blaming that on injured receivers.
No, that's why I'm here. At some point, about it goes like in cycles of a couple weeks, I will get every fan base to be pissed off at me at some point. That's fine because I just tell it like it is and from my perspective, and I either spit facts or I spit logical opinion, one or the other, and there you go. I even had, the worst thing that happened to this channel is people finding out who I root for, because I have these moron Michigan fans. And for any Michigan fans that are watching, I'm not necessarily talking to you, so calm down. But there are moron Michigan fans, just like there are moron Ohio State fans, USC fans, Alabama fans that call me a hater, even though they're probably the same people that 3 years ago, when they didn't know who I rooted for, had no idea. So just because automatically they know who I root for, they call me a hater and that I'm biased and my opinions off.
I almost think you should kind of embrace it. Like at least once a week, put out like a video where you're wearing your like Arch Sleester jersey and just trashing Michigan or whoever your opponent's going to be, just being a full homer for like 10 minutes.
I did that once.
I know. I think everyone would love it.
And I don't even remember what I said. I don't even remember if I mentioned Michigan. I'm sure I did. But I did that a long time ago. Yeah. And you probably spurred it on.
I remember in the video, you like knocked all the helmets off your stand and put Ohio State by itself. I was kind of worried you might have broken them, if I'm being honest. But all right. Anyway, man, the second team I wanted to hit hasn't been touched on. I don't think it would have been if I hadn't mentioned it tonight. Air Force 6-0. 6-0, Air Force about to be ranked for the first time since 2019, so not that long ago. But really, really great game. No one else probably watched it. I've only watched it because I'm literally in the Air Force. They tried so hard to give it away. They fumbled it 2 plays in a row. They fumbled it inside their own red zone both times. One of them led to a touchdown, which they blocked an extra point, which is always hilarious. This is against Wyoming, by the way. The second, and then they come out and fumble it again, and then they sack them and back them all the way up far enough that they miss a field goal and then run 52 yards for a touchdown. So
they won the game by how much?
They won it by 7.
Oh, And the only reason I ask that is our handicapper here. That was his pick of the week.
Okay. I'm not even sure. I wasn't paying attention to the spread. Does that mean they covered?
No, they did not cover.
Okay.
They were a 10 or 11 point favorite.
Well, anyway, they are about to be hopefully, I would hope now at least they would be a ranked, even though, as you have pointed out numerous times and probably every week, it doesn't mean anything. 25 is a magical number, and that doesn't mean anything. But I think they are about to be, they're about to have the honor of a number in front of their school. How does that sound? That's what that means. Instead of just saying AFA, it's going to say have a number in front of it and then AFA when I watch them on TV.
I'm looking at the rankings in the AP from last week, and they should have a number of 28 next to their name, because the same process that gives the points to the first 25 teams gives points to the rest of those teams. So they should just put a number next to their name, because they already, not even in theory, in practicality, they do have a number in front of their name. They just refuse to put them on a list. It's stupid. It is even stupid to this point that there are 25 points that separate the number 24 and number 25 teams, and there are only 5 points that separate number 25 and number 26. They're all ranked.
Right. So basically 26 and 25 are almost indistinguishable, but 25 is an honorary position that 26 doesn't have, is what you're saying.
Even if you receive one vote under the process, you have been ranked.
Well, anyway, just wanted to throw some love out there to the Air Force Falcons. And all right, that's really all I got.
Well, thanks for calling, Reasonable Gump. We appreciate it.
All right, man.
Have a good night.
Hopefully I'll talk to you soon.
Sounds good. Call anytime. All right. Let's keep it moving here at the Voice of College Football. And yeah, it's been a great night. Let's catch up with some super chats here. So we got Steven chiming in. Steven says, only a Michigan fan could take delight in trolling Indiana. Classic Michigan stuff coming in from Steven. Steven, thank you so much for that. We appreciate the contribution. And yes, now we've got Erica chiming in. Good to see Erica. Huge win for the Hawkeyes. Enormous win. A win that will prompt me to, if I would have had time tonight, I would have done it. I will probably post a video tomorrow. I've got to have something to say about a 15-6 win for Iowa. This formula works in the I was going to say the SEC, in the Big Ten Western Division. They are the best program in the Big Ten Western Division, and they have a formula. It would not work in any other division. Not that they couldn't win games and be competitive, because they could, but for all their issues on offense, they have a formula, they have a process, and it works for them. Now, if there was another team on the other side that had the name Michigan or Georgia or a few others, then it wouldn't work, because they'd be putting too much pressure on their defense. So within the confines of their division, it works. So Erica, thank you so much for being here. Erica says, can you please post the call-in link? Oh, sorry about that. We will do that right now. I believe I've got it copied and pasted. Yes, I do. Sorry about that. It should be in the description section of the videos, but I did not place it there. All right. Next super chat coming in from Alex. Go Beavers. Yes, big win for the Oregon State Beavers tonight over UCLA. Last I saw it was 36-24. And the final score from Corvallis, yes, it is in fact 36-24 Oregon State over UCLA. All right, let's keep it moving here at the Voice of College Football. We've got Michigan Man chiming in.
What's up, Mark?
Not too much. Before we get started, Michigan man, I want to make sure that I'm seated because I'm getting ready to go to school and have you school me.
Well, I'm actually not going to start talking about Michigan. I want to talk about who.
I'm
If
just
you,
referring to it was rather funny because I did not see that, but somebody let me know that that you had schooled me that you moved
I don't
on
know.
from
I don't know who
the
that
jump
was,
ball.
man.
What's
Look,
that?
man, Mark, you're one of the best analysts on
Well, I
YouTube.
appreciate it. And like I say many times, Michigan man, although we sometimes disagree and we have good debates, but that's what it's about. If you just came on here and we agreed about everything, it wouldn't be too fun. I do think everything you bring to the table is extremely valid and knowledgeable. No doubt about that.
Oh yeah. The USC thing, man. I don't know what everybody's talking about, man. I saw this coming. If you've been watching USC
Sure
these
you did.
past weeks, I mean, this game's kind of crazy actually because Notre Dame only had 250 yards on offense. But when Caleb Williams is throwing 3 interceptions pretty much in the red zone,
Did they really only have 250 on offense?
yeah, USC had more yards than them.
Well, that
USC,
doesn't surprise me too much, but only 250.
yeah, it was 300 and like something to 250 and something yards.
Yeah, I've got to check out this. So this is where I stand on the USC defense, and then I'll let you just have your take. Is that I was trying to figure out early in the year. We know that the USC defense was historically bad 2 years ago. It was like really awful, atrocious 2 years ago. And basically all they added last year were some players that could create some turnovers, but they were still just statistically bad. They just got turnovers. And then this offseason, they added some nice pieces all over the place, Bear Alexander being the most notable one. And so I was in a wait and see mode. Now we know that everybody's moved the ball on them, excluding maybe Stanford, ironically. And we know that Arizona State, for a team that just got shut out by Fresno State and looked abysmal up until that day, was in a game with USC in the fourth quarter. And we know that Colorado put 41 points on the board and they did their thing. And then when it really hit me was so with all of these performances stacked on top of each other, I am more and more thinking, okay, USC sucks on defense. USC sucks on defense. But it really hit home because the excuse, as you well know, has been, well, it's garbage time and they've got a big lead and they're not taking these teams seriously. But when they
No,
get
they're bad.
triple overtime by Arizona, then that's a serious game. And they could have lost that game, easily could have lost that game. And then after what we saw tonight,
look, I saw this coming from a mile away, and I'm not shocked at all. And it's not just the defense, which honestly, I mean, it's really the offense that put them in bad positions tonight, if we're being honest. And
yeah.
It was 200. I got the number, 251 yards on Notre Dame, 251. And I saw this coming from the offense too. If you've watched USC the past, like I say, 3 weeks, really, their O line is terrible. It has played terrible. They can't protect. They're getting destroyed in the run game. They're getting pushed around. So coming in tonight, I'm not surprised that the game went the way it did. I'm really not.
So Notre Dame, actually, now that I look at the box score, with all those special teams plays they had and the scoop and scores and the interceptions, they basically, their offense just wasn't on the field. It wasn't like they had a bad night, but they just weren't on they only ran 49 plays.
Oh yeah, I don't think they had a bad night. My point is Caleb Williams is the reason more than the defense that this game is the way it is. And
Agreed.
even watching some of the interceptions, they were just bad, man.
Yeah, they were
bad decisions. So look, I'm not surprised by that at all. That's all I have to say. I know people are going to be talking like, "Oh, look what they did. That's crazy." Not to me. When I've been evaluating this, and it's not shocking at all.
I know you have, and I got to give you a lot of credit for maintaining your composure. I got to say, I was extremely impressed the other night when you were arguing with our guy Tim, and he was just lashing out and going crazy on you, and you were just taking it and basically saying, "This is what it is." So
Yeah, I was like, look,
enjoyed
man, it's
that.
gonna bite you. I was like, hey, man, Tim, it's gonna bite you. I'm telling you, like, it's gonna bite you coming up. And honestly, they could lose any of these games coming up.
Oh,
I'm not sure their exact schedule, but they could lose any of these games coming up.
they've got Oregon, they've got Washington, they've got UCLA, they've got Utah.
They could lose all 4 of those, and I wouldn't be surprised if 3 of them were by multiple scores.
I think so. They've got 5 games, I believe, left. Yeah, those are the 4 toughies, and they got Cal.
Oh
They've
yeah,
got 4 tough games ahead of them.
oh yeah. And hey, man, Ohio State, real quick, man. That was a good performance today, man. I know it's Purdue, well, but we haven't played anybody really, so I don't really look at. Like I said before, I'm not as big on. I am big on who you play, but also how you playing. And Dallin Hayden might not. Is it Dallin Hayden? Is that his name?
Yes.
He might not. He might. They might have to not burn, or they might have to burn that red shirt. I know they wanted to red
Yeah,
shirt him.
I agree with you.
Again,
That's my guy. That's my guy. I've been clamoring for him.
yeah, I just think he's got a good combination of vision and speed. That maybe the others don't. Well, I mean, Henderson has good speed, but he seems to get tackled pretty easily amongst other things.
Everything has to be perfect for Travion Henderson.
Yeah, exactly. I still want to see them do it run the ball against a better defensive line, but that was a good performance and something you like to see. I don't got too much to say about that game, honestly. On the Michigan game, look, that's the definition of sleepwalking if you've ever seen it. They punted on the first 2 possessions, and then they proceeded to go touchdown, 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 field goal, touchdown, touchdown. I mean,
I do think you have to give some level of credit to Indiana, and I knew that was short-lived and Michigan would crush them, but it was kind of fun to watch, and I'm not saying that just because of who I root for. It was just fun to see it be somewhat competitive for a while because I watched the whole game pretty much until it got like whatever 45-7, but I watched the game. I made myself watch the game. I thought, okay, I got to watch this team play, and I'm going to post a video, and got a lot of Michigan people, so I'm going to deliver. I got to watch this. I watched them and Ohio State play at the same time, and it was just kind of interesting. At least it didn't turn out to be a blowout as fast as I thought it was going to be. So at least it was interesting for about a quarter.
Yeah, no doubt, man. I mean, like, an interesting stat with that game too is at one point in the first quarter, it was obviously before they started their first touchdown drive. I think Indiana, it was like 150 offense yards to -5 or something for Michigan.
I marked down 141 to -8 is when
That's what it was. That's what it was. And it's crazy considering that the game finished 407 yards for Michigan and 232 for Indiana. That means for the final 3 quarters, they didn't even have close to 100 yards. Or they had, what is that? That's 90 yards. I take that back. But still, I mean, that's crazy. I just don't got too much. I do got some numbers I want to throw at you. I'll see what you think about this. First team in the AP poll era to score 30 or more points and allow 10 or fewer points in each of its first 7 games of the season, 1936.
Wow. Yeah.
I mean, we could keep talking this schedule stuff, and I get it. But again, at some point, we got to acknowledge this could be a historical team. I'm just saying.
I do acknowledge it. I'm just saying they haven't.
I don't mean you. I don't mean you.
Good.
I don't mean you. I'm just saying there's plenty of people out there that don't realize. I mean, look, what is that? Almost 100 years?
Yeah.
So I mean, this is the best Michigan team I've ever seen. Honestly.
I tend to think the same thing. I do want to wait until I see them play Penn State. That'll be awesome to see that. But I agree with you. I think they're just flat out dominant. And again, I had a little bit of fun. It was a little bit interesting to see Indiana move the ball downfield and then they throw the pick in the red zone, and then they are able to bring it right back down, get up 7-0. It could have been 14-0. And then they're throwing around JJ on defense for a couple series. So it lasted for about 3 or 4 or 5 series. And then, of course, Michigan woke up, and it was just a bloodbath after that.
Oh, yeah.
By the way, Purdue was 73rd in yards per play defense before the Ohio State game. So the one thing I will say about that, even though it's not very good, the one thing I'll say about Purdue's schedule is, though, even though they haven't played great teams, they have not played any bad teams. They loaded up their non-conference with, I know Virginia Tech's not good, but they're starting to win some games now. At least they're a Power 5. They haven't played any FCS, any Group of 5 outside of Fresno State, which is one of the best Group of 5. So at least Purdue's played legitimate opponents every week. And I was really impressed with Ohio State. And I know that I'm not overselling that because of who they played. I'm just saying that it did me some good to see them be able to run the ball and then continue to do what they're doing on defense.
Yeah, look, you had to get some confidence in the run game. It doesn't matter who it was when you got a team like Penn State coming to town next week, period.
Yeah.
I'm not surprised they were able to run the ball on. I watched some of that game. The size difference on the field, it was noticeable. In the trenches, I'm talking about. It was noticeable. I'm not surprised they were able to run the ball. I think they're ranked 70-something in rushing defense. It's not shocking, but you want to see that, and it's good for a team to see that, especially going against. Look, this Penn. Let's talk about this Penn State team, man. I think this. I already got my pick. I think Penn State's going to win that game.
Okay.
I know I'm a Michigan fan. It's coming from that. Don't get me wrong. It's coming from that standpoint. But honestly, I look at the two teams. I just think Penn State's the better team right now. I just do.
No, I understand that.
Would I be shocked if Ohio State win? No, I wouldn't. At the end of the day, will James Franklin that game? Maybe. But I just think I don't know, man. To me, it's the first time I can remember watching these two teams, and I think it's not a huge gap, but I think there is a gap there right now.
Yeah, I get that. I get that. I do think that Ohio State's put together 6 really good quarters, the second half against Maryland and now Purdue. And I don't think it plays a ton into it, but Ohio State has won this game. It's kind of hard to believe, as good as Penn State's generally been in the last decade, that Ohio State's 10-1 against them the last 11 years.
Well, yeah, James Franklin, I think, is 4-14 versus Michigan and Ohio State in his tenure. So, also real quick, another little stat here. When garbage time is not accounted for, Michigan is number 4 in yards per play offense and number 1 in yards per play defense. Just thought I'd throw that out there. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I assume that by garbage time that they've used a reasonable metric for that. What's that, outside of like 20 points or something like that?
I believe so. Michigan is the only team that's won every game by 20 plus, but so that's probably a factor. Yeah, did you watch that Michigan State game?
I got interested in it when the other games that was a noon game, right?
I believe so.
Yeah, at some point when I saw Rutgers coming back, I flipped to it, but I didn't really take much in.
Yeah, no doubt. But 24-6 in the fourth quarter. You're down. Rutgers was down 24-6 in the fourth quarter. This was just a weekend of, you had some crazy comebacks, but that 24-6 fourth quarter, I think they muffed a punt in the end zone. Allowed them to come back.
And Rutgers isn't even a team that you think about that can make a comeback.
No, which is crazy. I think Michigan's going to destroy them next week. I think we're just going to continue doing what we're doing. Last thing that I'll say, I just slipped my mind right there. What was it? Hold on, I got it, man. It's going to come back to me. Oh yes. I've been debating with people. I think that Colorado loss is the worst loss And I don't know the whole history of Colorado, but I would imagine it's up there with one of the worst losses in Colorado history.
I thought you were going to say the worst loss in college football this season. It might be that.
It might be that, but I mean, look, you're up 29-0 at halftime to a god awful, arguably worst Power 5 team in football.
Yep.
Somehow you give up, I know overtime's included. Somehow you give up 40-something points and lose the game?
Well, I know you've been warning us about Colorado falling apart too.
Hey man, look, I just know I deep dive, man. I know I might be a fortune teller when it comes to football. I don't know what it is. But that's all I had to say, man. That's probably the worst. That's the worst loss of the season, but it might be the worst loss in Colorado history. Just saying.
Yeah, I hear you. Well, and that's saying something because Colorado's been awful for about 15 years. Before we leave you here, Michigan man, you may want to check out the comment that Dave left. I posted it on the screen. Bama would boat race Michigan.
Well, he needs to work on his spelling first before he.
Yeah, that's.
I don't know who BSM is. I don't know what team that is.
I didn't even notice that.
I don't know what team that is though. But yeah, real quick. I want to see what you think about this. Do you agree that a bad loss is worse when you're expected to win and then how you lose that game versus like losing a game 60-something to 10 when you were the underdog? I think what a bad loss should be considered is something that you were expected to win and maybe you lose that game, but then how you also lose that game factors into what a bad loss is versus just getting blown out by a team no one really expected you to beat anyways.
So can you give me an example of both?
Okay, so like Northwestern gets blown out, just hypothetically blown out by Ohio State this year, like 40 to. They don't play Northwestern, but
yeah, like
40-some,
like we would expect them to.
Yeah, and then for example, the Colorado game where they were a 14-point favorite, up 29.5, and then lose. I would consider that a worse loss.
Absolutely,
because just trying to throw that out there because I got a lot of football fans that think somehow. They don't understand those nuances for some reason, and I don't understand how people can't get to that multi-level thinking. But anyways, I'm gonna get out of here, man. Hope you enjoy the rest of your day.
Appreciate you being here. Have a good night. All right, let's keep it moving here at the Voice of College Football. Appreciate you all being here. Thank you for everyone who's hanging on the line. We will get to your calls right now. We got Alex. Thank you so much for that. I think we already hit that. Go Beavers. All right. Buckeye Mike's on the line.
How you doing tonight, Mark?
Doing all right. What's going on, sir?
Well, I just wanted to touch through a couple of games because I'm sure everybody's going to eventually touch on all of them. Since I didn't get to come on last night, Colorado-Stanford to me was quite the shocker. I did not expect Colorado to fall apart like they did in the second half.
Yeah, no one did.
USC Notre Dame, I didn't boast about it a lot publicly, but I saw this coming. Just with the last 3 of the last 4 games, I mean, shoot, Arizona should have beaten USC, I think, for sure. And Arizona State, if they had 5 more minutes, they probably would have. Ohio State, Purdue, because the game was on Peacock and I couldn't find a good stream on YouTube. I did not get to see it. But the thing I did see was shout out to Caleb Ennis. Had that last touchdown of the game for Ohio State. It was nice 58-yarder up the sideline. Then he cut it back inside. Wow, that dude looks like he could be a threat in the near future. Michigan, Indiana. Yes, I completely agree with everything everyone has said. It was nice to see Michigan get a test in the first quarter instead of just seeing them jump out to an early multiple touchdown lead and just kind of hit the cruise control. And there was one thing I wanted to ask you about because I got destroyed in the Michigan Indiana chat
Oh
for
boy.
the stream on YouTube.
Yeah.
Does transitive property mean anything to you? Because I suffered through a lot of Ohio State. What happened? What happened to Ohio State? You guys only beat Indiana by 20, and we're doing it by 45.
Oh
What
Lord.
happened?
Okay. Does transitive property mean anything? Yes, it means something, but does it really mean much? No, it doesn't. For example, Mike, transitive property. I was having an argument with transitive property a couple seasons ago. And as you recall, that was the season Ohio State lost to Oregon. And I was having somebody who was trying to like use about 4 degrees away to prove some team was better than some team. And you know what I strung together that season? I said, you know what? This Ohio State team that won the Rose Bowl, that finished 11-2 and top 5 in the country. You know what? They lost to Oregon. Oregon lost to Stanford. Stanford lost to Arizona. Arizona lost to Northern Arizona. Are you telling me Northern Arizona is better than Ohio State? So there's your transitive property. You can do it with almost anybody. With anybody that's lost a game, you can use a transitive property and you can go find a path to almost any team in the country.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah, in the other game,
So it's I'm sorry to interrupt, but it's more about resume. So that's a little bit different than just taking one little path of scores and trying to find and needle your way to something. But if you take a resume of a team, then that's at this point in the season, 7 games for just about everyone to say, this is who this team is.
yeah. And I mean, that's more like I tried to tell them, like, when we played them, it was week 1. We were dealing with a multiple quarterback issue, new offensive system, I believe, new quarterback for Indiana, I believe. And when it got to the point that the guy was just like, you're a big dummy this, dummy that. And I'm like, okay, yeah, I'm done interacting with you because it's pointless.
Okay, this is what you do, Buckeye Mike. You let them know, okay, what was the final score of the 2018 Ohio State-Michigan game? And you show them that score. And then you show them all the common opponents of Ohio State and Michigan that year. You know what you're going to get? You're going to see that Ohio State had narrow wins against Maryland, Nebraska, not a very impressive win against Michigan State and others. If you go through the litany of scores of 2018 common opponents between Ohio State and Michigan, you would come to the conclusion that Michigan was a much better football team. But when they played, Ohio State blew them off the field. So the points that you brought up are valid. It was Kyle McCord's first start. They yanked him at one point during the game because they were trying to look at both quarterbacks. It's just not even in the realm of a debate or argument to even compare what Michigan did against Indiana and what Ohio State did against Indiana. It's just we know that both teams are miles ahead of Indiana. So regardless of whether they beat them by 20 or beat them by 45, it's inconsequential.
Right. That was the main point I was getting at. And then, people coming from side to side, they're like, oh, Ohio State's only won 2 titles since 1970. Okay. If you're a Michigan fan, you've only won 1, I think. But yeah. So the other thing too,
Buckeye Mike, if you want me to give you an argument against Michigan fans, I can write one out for you that would just
it was just annoying because they were like, you're an Ohio State fan. Why are you in this stream? And I'm like, because I'm at work and I can't find a workable stream for any other game. But
and I say that knowing that Michigan fans have bragging rights right now. Absolutely, they do.
And then, like Moose pointed out to me, I think in the chat earlier or in that stream chat, that you either, because like there are some people that put the scores in parentheses after their name or like the records. And I was trying to troll one of them, was like 16-4 in the last 20 years. and he was like, "You got to pick the overall or the most recent." And I'm like,
Oh, they make the rules. Okay. I love these people that make rules about arguments. Well, there should be a framework to the argument. Are we talking about right now? Are we talking about the last 10 years? Are we talking? But no one can dictate to you, oh, it's either the series record all time or it's just last year's game. Well, no, you don't get to make up the debate.
yeah, because I mean there are
It's just
multiple
moronic. So the game 3 years ago or 4 years ago doesn't count, but the game in 1912 counts. It's just idiotic. Bring these people my way.
Because I was like, somebody was like, kept saying, well, Michigan owns the series as a whole. I was like, well, duh, nobody. That's what it was. He called me a dummy because I was like, well, nobody's arguing that because Michigan won the first 15 games. It took Chick Harley in 16 for Ohio State to win. And he was like, oh, you're a big dummy. Go cry and cope some more. Drink the Michigan tears. I'm like, okay. But yeah, congrats to Marcus Freeman and Notre Dame and our good buddy Will Indy.
Yeah.
Glad Notre Dame won. It shows USC has a lot to work on, a lot more than we thought. And one of the last things I wanted to touch on tonight, because I don't know how deep your call-ins are, but one of the last things I wanted to touch on is, do you think, I know it doesn't matter as a whole, but do you think that Archie's record is safe for now? And do you think that Michael Penix has proven that he is currently the front runner? Not to say that someone else might pop up out of somewhere, but you think he is currently the front runner?
So I will answer those to say yes and yes. That I almost posted something tonight on Twitter, but I got distracted. That at some point in that game, I was going to say that Archie Griffin must be smiling somewhere because Caleb Williams is not going to win the Heisman Trophy. He would need to. I shouldn't say that he can't win the Heisman Trophy at this point, but that performance tonight really, really damaged the chances, especially since there is a Michael Penix, there is a Bo Nix, there is a Drake May, those guys, JJ McCarthy having outstanding seasons. There have been Heisman Trophy winners that have posted games like Caleb Williams did tonight, but they didn't have those kind of players posting just sterling numbers every week and winning. He's going to have to win out and post great games to get back in the running. This is Michael Penix's trophy today, right now.
Yeah, I mean, as I saw somewhere it said that Penix has had over 300 yards in every game this year, I think. And yeah, I would not be surprised if Williams still finishes top 5, but at this point, I am going to take the field over Williams repeating. And yeah, congrats to all the winners. Sorry to all the losers today. Subscribe to the Voice of College Football, and not just the main channel here. Subscribe to all the channels. It helps everybody out. It helps Mark out, and it helps the community grow. We're a great family around here, most of us. You know, some of us can pick at each other. We're awesome people all around if you get to know us all. And we just enjoy the fun and the little nitpicking at each other. So subscribe to all the channels and you're in for a good time. And you're definitely in for an expert take treat when it comes to Mark's stuff. And some very factual-ish opinions on the other channels. So yeah, join the family and have some fun.
I appreciate that, Buckeye Mike. Have a good night.
You too. Go Bucks.
I would go off on this statement here from JSC, but we don't have time. Let's get to the calls. All right. I don't know what he's asking for right here. I don't know what I'm supposed to spit out. All right. Let's keep it moving here at the Voice of College Football. Next call. What's going on tonight?
Oh, hi, Mark. This is Moogie. Sorry.
Yeah. How you doing tonight?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good.
Well, yeah, no, sorry, I'm a bit nervous, but
No, you're fine.
man, this was definitely a great day. Uh, I might, I will touch on what the guy previous a little bit, just so I can segue into this about the nitpicking about the transitive properties or people comparing how they performed against other teams and stuff. And this is the thing. We pretty much every team has struggled up to this point. So some weeks I'll be seeing some people say, "Oh, this team is great," and then the next week they're like, "Oh no, this team's actually really bad."
Mm-hmm.
And I personally, in my opinion, I think it's just about teams don't show up. But do you think there's any teams that are like a USC where they're just who may actually just may end up fumbling? Like, for example, Georgia allowed like 20 points to Vanderbilt today, which is like a really, really, really bad Vanderbilt team, even for Vanderbilt standard. So do you think maybe, like, I know it's hard to bet against Georgia, but you think seeing how they've been performing in these past few weeks, there might be a bit of concern for that team?
Oh, yeah, I do think that there's concern. They played a South Carolina team that is obviously proven to be a marginal team and an Auburn team that's in that same category of mid-tier at the very best in the SEC. And they were taken to the fourth quarter, and really Auburn had a legitimate shot of beating Georgia. Now, they did put together an effort last week that the result looked more impressive last week than it does today, now that Kentucky has lost to Missouri, but they did wipe Kentucky off the field last week. Now, this Vanderbilt game, I think that these kind of games are difficult to assess because Georgia was never really threatened in the game. They didn't put it on Vandy the way most of us would expect, or the odds makers would expect, as a 33-point favorite. But they were never threatened in the game. So could there be warning signs in that game? Absolutely. I'm not totally convinced of it, though. Let's also understand that I've gone through every national championship season, and you have to go back to the 95 Nebraska team before you find a team that did not struggle against anyone. They just basically blew out everyone. And most of those struggles that those teams had were against some marginal teams that won national championships. 2016 Clemson lost to an 8-5 Pitt team. They would have lost to a 8-5 NC State team, except for NC State missed a 30-yard field goal that would have won the game on the last play of the game. So they went to overtime. They won the game. Ohio State in 2014 won the national championship after losing to 7-6 Virginia Tech, and we could go on and on and on and on with those examples. Syracuse beat a number 1 seed in Clemson in 2017, and that Syracuse team was 4-8.
Right. Even the 2019 LSU team that people say is the best all time, that week one, I think it was like 2 scores in the fourth, but Texas did score like a late touchdown, if I remember correctly. And the final score was like,
it was a great game.
Yeah,
it was a really good game.
It was a really good game, but Texas finished like 7-5 that season.
Yeah, Auburn wasn't that great of a team that year. They were good.
Mm-hmm.
They were a good top 20 to 25 team, and they pushed LSU to a 23-20 game. LSU would probably be the closest example recently. Maybe Bama in 2020 is a team that almost wiped everyone out, but Bama was challenged in the SEC championship game against Florida. They were challenged against Ole Miss that year as well.
Yep, that's true. Yeah, no, and that's also what I personally enjoy about this season, because I'm looking here, I'm like, who could I even say who are the top 8 teams who could, like, forget top 4, even who could finish top 8, like, assuming there was like an 8-team playoff. There's not, but yeah. I'm just saying. And I'm like, I don't even know where to begin on how to evaluate or how to, you know.
Well, I would admit, and this is where I try to be very honest with everyone, for as much as I like to be unbiased, and I want to be just based on logic and based on what we're watching, based on results, just based on the actual play on the field, that it's difficult to erase the names Georgia and Alabama and Ohio State away from teams. If we were able to do that and just watch the games and have the results and not know that that's supposed to be the best team or that's supposed to be one of the best teams, and evaluate these teams, I'm guessing that there's a bias in most of us, depending on who we root for. Of course, that's a bias, but just in thinking that Alabama, Georgia, Ohio State, and now Michigan are just that talented and they're supposed to be the best teams. So we tend to think and probably expand on their results more than other teams and be impressed by them and just think that they're better.
Right. No, I completely agree. In fact, I'm like, I enjoy watching Big Ten football, but I despise Big Ten fan base. But despite that, because I'm an SEC fan too, despite that, I do feel like Ohio State just gets past 2 years, whether it was like that Oregon loss or like or that Northwestern game last year, where it's like, yeah, they deserve criticism. Or even this year, the Youngstown State, and people like, oh, Ohio State's, they're not looking at, they're not gonna win. And I'm like, dude, it's the beginning of the season. It's like, and you already mentioned it earlier, like Kyle McCord was like just starting out, and he even got pulled out, and they're testing the other quarterback too before he was finally named the starting quarterback. I forget when exactly he was finally named the starter, but once that happened, he's starting to play with more and more confidence. And it's like teams are getting better and stuff. And weird transition. But speaking about teams who are getting better, Oklahoma State,
yeah,
they just beat Kansas. Now Jason Bean did have a terrible interception, like basically in the end zone, and like overthrew one guy who was like open. But Oklahoma State just beat a Kansas State team who was preseason ranked. We don't know how good they are, and now they knocked off Kansas, who I assume is one of the better Big 12 teams. So you think like maybe now, because I think when they were playing South Alabama, they were rotating like 3 different quarterbacks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And now that they have, I'm forgetting the name,
Alan Bowman.
Yep. Yeah, maybe right now they could just come and surprise people. I'm not saying they're going to beat Oklahoma or Texas, but for the 3rd spot in the Big 12, absolutely.
Yeah, it's really strange with Oklahoma State because they had a subpar season last year, and of course Spencer Sanders was there forever, and he had a falling out with Mike Gundy. And here's a guy that, despite some of his turnover issues, has accounted for almost 100 touchdowns in his career and over 10,000 yards. So he hightails it to Ole Miss, where he doesn't even win the job and leaves a secure starting position at Oklahoma State. And then they also had some other key defections, like Mason Cobb, their best linebacker, went to USC. And they start this season and they just look atrocious. And a lot of people felt as though Mike Gundy, even though he's built up a ton of equity there and certainly has a longer leash than most coaches would have, or any coach there would have, that maybe it was time for him to move on. They played a really lousy game at Arizona State, even though they won. You mentioned the South Alabama game, a Power 5 team losing to South Alabama by 33-7. But yeah, Mike Gundy said, and it sounded a bit ridiculous and like it wasn't going to work. And I got to include myself. I didn't talk about it on here, but it went through my mind that why are you wasting non-conference games? But he flat out stated, we're going to rotate 3 quarterbacks. We're going to treat our non-conference games like preseason games. And he also said that about the running back position. And the running back that they played today, shoot, I can't think of his name, but he ran for 100 yards. He became the first Oklahoma State running back in 30 years to catch over 100 yards in passes in a game. And Bowman had a really nice game, 336 and 3 touchdown passes. And they knock off Kansas State 10 days ago or a week ago, and now they get this win against Kansas. So they have beaten the two teams that probably up until a week ago were considered the third and fourth best teams in the conference.
Okay, that's some good information you gave. Okay. Yeah, no, it's yeah, they were basically running all over Kansas, and if they were not running, they were doing like screen passes, like wide receivers on the side, and they were just running up the field. And I'll just ask one last question before I bore the audience with teams that no one really cares.
To talk about the same teams over and over, so I actually enjoy these conversations. And before you make your last point, you know, it really struck me after watching Oklahoma State beat Kansas State last Friday night and seeing Gundy on the field after the game and being asked a bunch of questions to basically lead him in the direction of, Coach, your team's been awful this year, and suddenly, bam, they beat a good team tonight. Where did this come from? But I just got the impression that here's a guy who's been at this school for so long, and he is so revered, and he has equity built up there that he decided, screw it, I'm going to do things my way, and we may suffer some losses, but I know we're not a national championship team, so I'm not that concerned about going 12-0. That for the good of the long stretch of the season and conference play, we're going to figure some things out. And I kind of told you so, that we were working on some things and it was going to come to fruition, because he made some comments like, you know, the team bought in, the team trusted us, And I thought, okay, there's Mike Gundy knowing what he's doing.
Yeah, no, that's a good perspective. Thank you. I didn't even think of it like that, or no. But yeah, I'll just ask my last question real quick. So how do you evaluate the Big 12 with Maryland losing to Illinois today?
This is kind of how I evaluate all of college football, that I think, and this goes back to your original comment about who's truly the best teams in the country. I think there are 3, 4, 5, 6 really, really good teams that we can count on. And then there's kind of a cascading level of teams that are maybe the next 10 or 15 that are really good, but they certainly could get picked off by worse teams, but they're more vulnerable. But they're like Duke would be an example. Like, they're in the top 15 to 20 somewhere, but it wouldn't surprise me or anybody else that watches the sport if they would have lost to NC State tonight. But they're still a really good team, and they're showing us that week after week. And then there is, after those roughly 20, 40 teams that could just randomly beat one another. Now, of course, some are slightly better than others, but they're almost toss-up games. And the Big 12 is comprised of almost they have a large portion of those teams outside of Texas, outside of Oklahoma. I think the Big 12 is a microcosm of what I just said nationally. Texas and Oklahoma are the best teams. I knew Texas was. Oklahoma proved a lot to me last week. And then there are a couple, 2 or 3 okay teams. And I guess maybe Oklahoma State's rising into that level. They just did it to Kansas today, even though that was, like you mentioned, Jason Bean, not the starting quarterback for Kansas. If they had Jalen Daniels, maybe the game would have been different. But probably Oklahoma State, Kansas State, maybe. And then it kind of drifts off into this just, there's no Vanderbilt, there's no Northwestern Illinois, or whoever you want to put at the bottom of the Big Ten. There's no Stanford. All the rest of the teams can win against each other. It's just, Houston, they look like they might be the worst team in the league, and then they beat West Virginia this past weekend. Baylor's looked awful, but then they come back from 4 touchdowns down and they beat UCF.
How's
Yeah.
Iowa State looking? Just curious.
Well, Iowa State, they gave Iowa a good game. They only lost by a touchdown. They've won. So they won today. I can't even remember who they beat Texas Tech today, right? Yeah, Iowa State beat Texas Tech by maybe 10 points today.
Okay.
And they're coming off before Oklahoma State beat Kansas State. Iowa State beat Oklahoma State by a touchdown. These teams are just going to trade wins and losses against each other.
I'm here for it. Yeah, no, I also only really asked the Maryland question because got a lot of hate from Big Ten fans about Maryland not being ranked top 25 before the Ohio State, and they're like, and I was like, it makes sense, but then I got accused for being SEC biased and stuff, and then that happened. And to be fair, there definitely was a case. I'm not saying there shouldn't have been, even like, because that happened before the loss today.
Both can be true.
Right.
I'm right there with you because I did the same thing. I argued with a few Big Ten fans because they're like, it's ridiculous that Maryland's not ranked and LSU's ranked. And I said, I get your point. Both can be true. It depends on how much you value just the wins and losses versus has Maryland played Florida State? Have they played Ole Miss? Have they played even a Mississippi State? Have they played Arkansas? And I'm not selling Arkansas and Mississippi State as great teams by any stretch, but still, to look at LSU's wins and losses and Missouri, those are pretty good football teams. So there was no comparison between the two schedules. So what do you value? A team that's 5-0 beating Indiana and Charlotte and whoever else, Towson State, or do you value the 3-2 team that beat a couple pretty good teams and barely lost to Florida State, or not Florida State, Ole Miss, and lost to a Florida State team that might be one of the 5 or 6 best teams in the country?
Right. No, I completely agree. And I was like, if anything, you should be upset about Tennessee being top 25. They didn't play nobody, struggled against Austin P. And then it's like it became clear that it was record watching. And well, I can't really say record watching because if you do, because I have to respect the records as well. And if that's something you value, then sure. But I'm just saying, like, Tennessee got demolished by Florida. Florida did look like a bit of a different team, but it's like still Florida's not a good team this year.
No. And that's one of the reasons why when I release my rankings, I don't proclaim that they're perfect. They're flawed, but I just state that they're at least logical. I at least have a system and I stick to it and they're logical. I can defend them. I'm not saying they're perfect. Sure, you can always, there's no perfect rankings. You can always say, well, it's number 7 should be 11 because of this. You can pick apart any rankings. There would be no way for us to completely fairly evaluate all the teams unless they all played each other.
No, for sure, especially in this season. And And the last thing about Big Ten before I hop up too is I didn't like that Iowa was ranked top 25 preseason, but you know what? They're doing their thing now. And that is a pretty decent Wisconsin team, even if they lost to Wazoo. They lost to Wazoo, right? Who just got destroyed by Arizona, which is very weird. But still, I know you already have other people that come in and talk about Iowa, but they're just such a weird team. So
absolutely. They are the biggest aberration in the country.
Yeah, for sure. But that's all I had. Thanks, Mark, for letting me
I appreciate the call, man. Have a good night.
You too. Thank you.
All right, let's keep it moving at the Voice of College Football. Yeah, we could talk about Iowa forever. All right, let's keep going. We got Sean on the line. Sean, how you doing tonight?
Fantastic. How are you, Mark?
I am doing just fine. Appreciate you being here. What's going on?
Oh, nothing much. Fantastic day of college football.
No doubt.
So Want to get your perspective on Dan Lanning's high leverage decisions in a couple of the spots.
So
I felt like he made the right. I felt where you're
take all
going.
these notes all day. I just
Yeah.
sit here and watch games and take all these notes. I put next to one of his decisions, dumb.
Which
That's what I think.
decision was that?
Right before halftime. That was a dumb decision. Kick
Okay.
the ball, make the field goal, go into halftime down by 1.
Okay,
That
so
was the win.
that was so do you there were 6 seconds on the clock right before halftime.
Yes.
In that spot, right? I thought the decision had to be in that spot. I thought it was the right decision to try a play there. It wasn't 4th down. So they could have thrown in an incomplete pass and still had a chance for a field goal, right?
Okay, that I would understand, but I'm almost certain it was 4th down.
Was it 4th down?
I'll look it up while you're talking.
Okay.
And I will say this, for as harsh as that statement was about that being a dumb decision, there is a risk reward and there are percentages on both sides, and there is a logic to saying this is going to be a high scoring game. We have to take opportunities when we are this close to the goal line to try to score 7 instead of 3. So there is reason to do that.
So I like I've sort of like examined these kind of situations often. So you have you're essentially passing up 3 points to get 7. So you're trying to get like a 4-point expected value difference right there. So you only have to be right about like 42% of the time for it to be right. I mean, do you think Oregon State is more than 42% likely to complete that pass?
See what you're bringing up there. I totally agree with, and it makes complete sense. However, there has to be, and I can't say that I can come up with a complete reasonable way to describe this, but you're only going to deal with the situation once. So you're not playing like a model of 10,000 times where you can say, okay, we're going to do what's going to work out for us over the course of the next 10,000 simulations. You only get one chance. So there is a bit of a different nuance to that than saying, okay, for example, it's a baseball season. You bat 600 times. Therefore, if you do X, Y, and Z, on base percentage counts for this. Therefore, we're not going to try to steal bases and give up outs. We're going to do this because over the course of a long season, those percentages will play in your direction. You're talking about taking one shot, and regardless of whether it's 87% or 41%, you have to determine based on the game situation in your offense and their defense whether that's the smartest thing to do. And I just felt as though it wasn't.
Yeah, and I mean, like, I think that comes from like intuition of watching football for all these years and sort of a tendency towards risk aversion.
Yeah.
In those situations. And I mean, I don't know. I felt I was pulling for Oregon more and more as the game went on because I kind of admired the decision making. He also went for it on a 4th down, which I also thought was completely the right decision.
With about 2 minutes left, you mean?
Yeah. You win the game if you convert in that situation, right?
Yeah. So
I mean,
again,
if you punt,
you're totally right. You're right in your analytics. I was watching it thinking, I think I would punt here. Now, I don't know the capabilities of their punter. I didn't look into that, but they were at the 47-yard line.
Yes.
So do you believe if you've got Iowa's punter, Torrey Taylor, he is most likely going to pin them inside the 10 and maybe inside the 5-yard line. And then there's 2 minutes left on the clock and they've got to score a touchdown and they've got to drive it, let's say 92 yards. that's a different scenario than I got the average punter and there's a huge chance that they could get the ball at the 20 or whatever. I think there's a difference there. And I don't know what the timeout situation was either, because that's a big deal. 2 minutes.
I think Washington had one timeout left, so you could bleed the clock down to almost nothing if you convert that spot.
If you convert the first down.
First down, yeah.
Yeah. I was talking about punting and them only having maybe one first down to go 90 yards.
Yeah. I mean, I think it was a bit of unfortunate luck. Probably if they convert either one of those situations, they probably win the game. And you gotta feel like, there's a good chance, a pretty high percentage chance they get one of those. They either get the touchdown or they get that fourth down conversion. I haven't checked social media or anything, but I can imagine there just being a lot of criticism of his decisions in those spots, and I think that's unfortunate because I actually kind of admired his perspective, how he went for it in those spots.
Well, it's unfortunate for two reasons. Number one, you bring to light a lot of the analytics in which a lot of the conventional thinking is not the right thinking or the best play. And number two, these people are obviously, they're hammering on their keyboard after the play is run and it either works or doesn't work.
Absolutely.
They're obviously not going to. It would be phenomenal if people would actually be honest and send out on social media, I thought that was a dumb thing to do, but it worked out or something like that. Right. Of course, they wouldn't do that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, my favorite anecdote for this was remember the Philly special in the Super Bowl right there?
Yeah.
I thought that was a really dumb play call in the moment. You're relying on one of the least athletic QBs in the NFL to run like a curl route or, run like a post route. And it only works if the defense is completely 100% fooled in that situation, right? That's the only way. That's your only out is deception. And it worked in that moment. If it didn't work, that would be Doug Peterson would be would be vilified for that.
Well, what's funny is if you bring up that situation, then you bring up the Michigan TCU playoff game, and Michigan did the same thing, and people call it dumb because it didn't work.
Right. And I would much rather have JJ McCarthy running that than Nick Foles.
Yeah. And the Philly special in the Super Bowl is considered one of the most brilliant play calls in Super Bowl history, of all time.
Yeah.
But it was stupid when Michigan ran it in the playoff.
Yep.
Now, I think a little bit of that thinking is, well, Michigan, they're supposed to be offensive line reliant, and they should just be able to power their way into the end zone. They don't need to deceive anyone.
Right. Absolutely. But am I often calling that Washington-Oregon game the game of the year so far, college football? I just thought it was excellent from beginning to end.
Yeah, I agree with you. If you're talking about, and I termed it this way when I first came on tonight, and I also posted a video, that I don't think it was the craziest, the most zany, the wildest, any of that.
Mm-hmm.
It was the two of the best teams in the country, probably the two best offenses that have been on the same field together in one game. It has Pac-12 implications, playoff implications, two great quarterbacks. It has all the elements that make it entertaining, exciting, dramatic, and all that. And because of that, I believe it was the best game this year.
Yeah. I mean, I had zero rooting interest, and I couldn't stay away from it. It was just fantastic. What happened to USC tonight?
their offensive line had a bad night against Notre Dame. Notre Dame just really dominated up front. And because of that, Caleb Williams was running around as he's prone to do anyway, and usually is able to pull off these plays. But he threw some passes that, almost like our previous conversation, that when he pulls them off, everybody jumps up and down and says how amazing it is. And it is amazing, but should he really be doing those things? And he got caught against a defense that was athletic enough and smart enough to play the right angles to force him into bad decisions. And so he couldn't throw his way out of making Brett Favre kind of passes all over the place. And Notre Dame's defensive line also was really good at anticipating his throws and batting the ball back in his face, or at least deflecting throws as well. So the combination of the offensive line not standing up to Notre Dame's defensive line and him not responding well to that was big.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't want to get too wonky on this, but what I thought was a weakness for Notre Dame coming into the game was schematically, they play a lot of they're a very cover one, man heavy type of defense. And I thought they did a really excellent job tonight of mixing their coverages and mixing their looks. I mean, I haven't seen like the all 22 tape. I don't know exactly what they did, but a couple of those throws were like right into coverage where I don't think Caleb expected there to be real coverage in these spots. Like he got it. He thought he had outs in certain situations. Like, okay, I'll scramble here and this guy will break open because they'll definitely be in man. They'll definitely be in cover one. They'll be in man. And that look wasn't there for him. And, and he made some bad decisions in those moments.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Al Golden came up with a good game plan for sure.
Absolutely, and it definitely doesn't help when it helps when your D line is mowing over their offensive line. I mean, there's no scheming for that when you're just dominating up front. And so, I mean, yeah, USC is just, they feel like they're due for one of these games or so a year. Was only Lincoln Riley's second year, but even going back to Oklahoma, even they would have games like this where they just really had a flatulent performance, and just, the team we've seen all year didn't show up.
Yeah, somebody mentioned there, Ralph, in the chat that they're voting Texas Oklahoma is a great game this year.
Yeah, that definitely was. That 100% was.
It tended to have more crazy plays in it, like special teams plays, fumbles.
Yeah, I think the quality of play overall in the Washington-Oregon game was better than this. It was not. I mean, it was a sharper game.
Yeah.
Than the Texas-Oklahoma game, but they were both fantastically entertaining. I didn't get to watch the Texas-Oklahoma game live. I have watched it since in like a 20-minute recap, but I was watching Ohio State, Maryland at the time. So, speaking of the Buckeyes, strong performance today. Mediocre competition. What do you make of this? I mean, I think it's good that they just did what they were supposed to do, I guess.
Yeah. I can't take anything negative away from it. Again, I don't want to oversell what they were able to accomplish because of the competition, but just flat out running the football practically at will is a great sign. McCord, I thought, was considerably better than he was last week, and last week than the week before. I think he just keeps getting better and better, and his stats don't tell the story because there were drops, and there were also balls that he threw that weren't necessarily drops, but like he threw a ball to Marvin Harrison Jr. that
Marvin totally misjudged, reached out with one hand.
Well, that was one, but there was another one that he threw like a laser. It was a beautifully thrown ball. Like the the DB was looking the wrong way, and it like went right over his shoulder, and Marvin Harrison didn't pull it in. There was another throw that he was sprinting left, and he threw it downfield to Xavier Johnson, and the announcer said, "Oh, it got batted away." No, it went right through Xavier Johnson's hands. It was a contested catch, but it was perfect. And he was sprinting left and threw the ball across his body, probably 35 yards downfield. And they ran the ball, and really, when it counted on defense, they looked really good. They played a complete game today.
Yeah.
And that's why it was 34-0. Shoot, when it was 20-0 at half, it should have been 28-0 because they missed PAT and Devin Brown fumbled going into the end zone.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I've said this about Purdue all year. They don't seem like they're struggling with the issues that you would have with a first year, like 36-year-old head coach or whatever, however old Ryan Walters is, in dealing with a bunch of transfer players. Like, they seem like they're competent at their job. Like, they don't make a lot of real mistakes. They don't beat themselves a ton.
No.
They're a professional outfit. They just don't have the horses at all.
Yeah.
To compete at this kind of level. And so, I mean, the fact that they could wave the wood to a team like that, it means something. I don't know how much, and it does, but it's a good sign going forward into next week's game. I got to say this is the first time all year I was focused on a game that was on one of these streaming outlets on Peacock, and it is miserable from a viewer's experience.
Oh, yeah, it was.
It's just, I mean, especially when you don't have a ton of screens to watch to flip and, I mean, I want to be able to watch as many of the games as I can. I don't want to be sitting through these commercial breaks. And I mean, I mean, Peacock is slower than probably the other. It's slower than Prime for sure. And I mean, it's miserable. They've got to figure some way to make the streaming thing work. I mean, I'm not against streaming outlets, airing live sports in the future, but there's a lot of kinks to work out with this.
Yeah. So I don't believe it was my technology. It wasn't my laptop, because I watch on ESPN and Fox and all these other streaming devices that are over the air as well. And it kept buffering, not buffering. It would like the play would like freeze.
Yeah.
And then like 10 seconds. And then I actually got a text from my buddy who said they couldn't get, for some reason, there was some kind of technicality. Maybe one of their TVs in their basement wasn't a smart TV or something. They couldn't get it on their TV. So they went to a local bar and they're showing the game. And they said there's like 4 screens around the bar, and they're all at a different place. And he said, and they're all freezing at different times. And he said it was just, people were just like, what the heck's going on? Because you see somebody streaking down the field with the ball, and then all of a sudden they freeze. And then you see players getting up from being tackled, and you don't even know, did he like keep running? Like, how far did he make it?
And there were a couple times during like review segments, they would show like one angle of the play that was under review once.
Yeah.
And then they would just sit around. You would see nothing but like shots of people standing around for like 3 minutes. I'm like, what?
Yes.
I played it under review.
Yeah.
No one,
They have to be smarter than that. They have to know that the viewer in this day and age is way sophisticated beyond that we're used to seeing like that angle. Okay, back to the first angle. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, before I go, thoughts on the Ohio State Penn State game? I mean, I don't know how much their showdown with UMass showed you today, but
Yeah, it showed me 63-0, and so,
Yeah, I mean, but like that's that's another potential classic showdown next week. I
oh,
mean,
yeah.
does Penn State have any real flaws that you've identified at this point in the season?
Well, considering that they've got two backs at the caliber that they do, they haven't run the ball as well as you would have thought, kind of similar to Ohio State. They've run it a little bit better than Ohio State before this week. So
Yeah.
that hasn't been great.
Yeah. I mean, has Aller?
He's not played well on the road.
No. I mean, and I don't think they've got as dynamic of weapons as they've had in the past. I don't think there's a Jahan Dotson or a Chris Godwin or a Deshaun Hamilton on this team.
Those guys are all functional. They're decent. They're decent players. They should be number 3 guys. They would be number 3 guys, their best guys at Ohio State, maybe.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think Fleming would be the number 1 receiver at Penn State.
Yeah.
To be honest. So,
yep.
Awesome. Look forward to next week. And and thanks for everything you do, Mark. I really appreciate everything.
Appreciate it. Thanks for the call. Have a good one, man. Our guy Sean checking in. Let's keep it rolling here at the Voice of College Football. We got Rob on the line. Hey, Rob, how you doing?
Hey, what's up, Mark? So I wanted to address a couple of things from previous callers. For Ohio Mike, you got to not pay attention to what some of these idiots on YouTube chat are saying in these games, man, because I mean, this is like the cesspool of society with some of these people. So don't let it get to you. I mean, every fan base has these types of people that come on, talk a bunch of trash, keyboard warriors. It's easy to do when you're online and you're anonymous and you can, just puff your chest and don't let it get to you. And as far as Sean goes, he asked what happened to USC. Well, the simple answer is we got to see the much anticipated matchup of Alex Grinch versus Jared Parker, two much maligned coordinators. And unfortunately for USC, Jared Parker kind of came out on top, even though it's not the offense of Notre Dame that did them in. It's more of the USC offense doing themselves in, thanks to Notre Dame's defense. I'd say one thing about Notre Dame that I've learned this year is that I don't really know what to make of this team. It's like, we're pretty good. I'll say that. I know we're somewhere in that like top 15-ish category, but it's like, are we better than that? Are we worse than that? I mean, it's just so weird. Our defense is the one shining spot. That's like the one area I'll say Al Golden has really kind of impressed me with his, the defense, the way they've played this year against, especially like top caliber, teams. Like we played Ohio State pretty well. We played USC exceptionally well, obviously, especially compared to how we played USC last year. But yeah, other than that, I mean, the offense was seemingly getting worse every week for the last 3 weeks. And, thankfully we didn't really have to lean on the offense too much tonight. It was like special teams and defense was kind of helping us out. Kind of like an Iowa game, we almost had like an Iowa thing going on tonight. But, it's kind of funny. As far as everyone who was coming on saying like they predicted this, they knew Notre Dame was going to win this and that. I don't get it. I'm a Notre Dame fan and I had no feeling for this game. I knew it could go either way. Like USC, I actually thought USC was going to come in here and take a win away because the way we've been playing offensively the last couple of weeks has been abysmal. So am I happy? Yeah. Am I surprised? Yes. Very surprised the game went the way it did.
I would have told you that if Notre Dame won, they would win a 24-20 kind of game. And I also just pretty much flipped a coin and thought, well, USC's getting 3 points, so I'll take those 3 points. I really didn't know either. Just I try not to fall into this trap of being enamored with skill position players and so-called speed advantages and all that sort of thing, because USC gives that allure of, because of their style of play more so than the athletes themselves, that they're faster, that they're quicker, that they've got a speed and space advantage and all that. And I bought into that to a certain extent, but I also thought that Notre Dame had other advantages, and those obviously came into play. And not that Notre Dame, and I think you would agree with this, would win this game by 4 or 5 touchdowns every time they play. Who knows what would happen if they played 10 times. But yes, Notre Dame's a really good football team, and I've been annoyed by people calling them trash and that they suck and all of that. They've played 4 really hard games, difficult games, and they've played 3 of them exceptionally well to different degrees. They at least played competently, if not excellently, in 3 of the 4. And in the game at Louisville, they played a good half to 3 quarters.
Yeah,
A competitive half to 3 quarters.
well, yeah, the Louisville game was close in the fourth quarter, and then we had
Yeah.
Marcus Freeman going for it on 4th and 11, like in his own I mean, the coaching has been exceptionally bad the last several weeks, and I'm kind of tired of all the people that are just like Marcus Freeman fanboys. I like the guy; he's a good guy. I'm not saying he's a bad coach, but the fact that some people say he's infallible and you can't criticize him because it's only his second year and this and that, come on. There have been some boneheaded coaching errors. It's not as bad as the Miami debacle from the other night.
No.
But look, yeah, I mean, the 11 guys on the field thing, I wasn't as upset with that as a lot of people were, because I don't think Notre Dame would have stopped Ohio State even if we had a full line there. Could we have? Perhaps, but it's not a guarantee like some people think. But there's worse play calling. I mean, and Jared Parker for me is not off the hook just because we beat USC. I mean, that Louisville game was lost in large part to the fact that he wasn't putting his offensive line in advantageous positions against Louisville, and he certainly wasn't calling a good game. And I'm not a professional play caller. I can't say I know better than Jared Parker, but as a fan who's watched offensive, play calling for a long time. I mean, when Louisville's stacking the box with like everybody daring you to like throw the ball and you keep running these kind of methodical, slow building run plays, it's not a recipe for success. So Jared Parker is definitely not off the hook. I want to see what we do against, Clemson. I mean, that's our last real test, quote unquote, but who knows? I mean, we should technically be able to win out, but it's not a guarantee. But enough about Notre Dame, because I know, that's a big brand. I think the funniest thing I saw over this last week was the referees calling out Colorado's PA announcer for pumping in music and all this like stuff during the plays. Like, yeah, the Colorado fans weren't happy, but hey, you can't get away with it. If you try every time, you're gonna get called out. So I thought that was pretty funny. And just the fact that Colorado collapsed, I think, the media might finally stop, and they kind of stopped after the beatdown they took from Oregon. But yeah, we might see a little bit less media hype over Colorado now, but we'll see. And yeah, I think as Sean said, the last caller, even though I'm biased towards Notre Dame, I still think that Notre Dame Ohio State game was one of the best games of the year. Yeah, probably the Washington Oregon game was better overall, and even the Texas Oklahoma. Those are probably my favorite 3 games of the year if I had to pick. But I mean, what do you think on that top 3?
I think that the Oregon-Washington game just came through in spades. And again, when I factor in quarterback play, entertainment value, quality of the teams, what's at stake, both in the Pac-12 and nationally, and that it's a rivalry, and in that environment, when you put it all together and how well the game then came into play, so all the expectations and all the peripheries of what it was supposed to be and how good the teams are elsewhere and otherwise, and then saw it play out on the field, putting all those things together, I tend to think that Oregon-Washington was the best game of the year thus far. Now, the Texas-Oklahoma game, I like the added narrative and intrigue that that's the last time they're playing in the Big 12 and that there was this kind of conflict that the Big 12 had in do they push their biggest game of the year or don't push their biggest game of the year because they're touting and promoting the teams that are leaving, but this is by far their biggest game of the year. So that was kind of interesting too.
Yeah, I think it's such a shame that Texas and Oklahoma are leaving for the SEC, and that like teams like USC are leaving the Pac-12, because if you look at this year, especially for the Pac-12, I mean, this has been a fantastic season for them, and now they're obviously heading to the Big Ten, which is going to make the Big Ten pretty crowded. Yeah, it's going to be a dog eat dog world even more than it is now with the Big Ten. Although I will say, I think some of the Pac-12 teams might find the Big Ten brand of football a little bit hard to adjust to. Yeah, we'll see how that goes. But hey, Big Ten defenses are definitely going to have to step it up with some of the offenses they're going to have to face. But I mean, it's not like there hasn't been teams with great offenses in the Big Ten. Especially with Ohio State leading the way for most of the last decade. Which reminds me, is that next week, Penn State, Ohio State?
Yes.
Yeah. What do you make of that game? Like, just taking your fan, the fact that you're an Ohio State fan out of it, what's your feeling on that game? Like, if you had to give the edge to one of the teams right now?
Penn State's played a more even season from start to finish, but that's not necessarily what's important. Because these teams change from week to week to a certain extent, and what happened in week 1, week 2, it should be counted. But in terms of trying to determine what's going to happen next week, I think it's more about this Ohio State team played what should be confirmed as a much better game than people were giving them credit for 24 hours ago against Notre Dame on the road. Especially since that was Kyle McCord's first start in a hostile environment. And then they backed that up with a game against Maryland. Now, Maryland lost to Illinois today. So these teams, you can always throw out the conditions, the disclaimers. Yeah. But against the Maryland team that was playing well, that was 5-0, they got off to a rough start. It took them a while to get going. But once they did, they wiped them out. And then they played their best game and Purdue's nothing, of course, to discuss. But Purdue has at least played. They might be the only team in the country. North Carolina would be the other that's played a reputable opponent every week. Like, they haven't played an FCS. They haven't played a group of 5 on a low level. Everyone they've played has been a Power 5 or Fresno State. So they've played a capable opponent every week, at least. And Ohio State, for the first time this season, just from start to finish, just blew them off the field, just dominated the game in every possible way. And so they finally put a complete game together, even though they were missing their top 3 running backs, their second best receiver. I think Ohio State's playing well, and I think McCord gets better every week. Our Michigan guy called earlier. He thinks Penn State's better and they're going to win the game. And I'm trying to be as unbiased about it as possible. I would have told you that Penn State was better like 3 weeks ago, but I think Ohio State's better.
Yeah, I think the fluke of Louisville, I mean, it's not necessarily a fluke. That was Notre Dame being an extremely, beat up physically. I mean, this is our bye week. After 8 weeks, we finally get a bye. So you talk about 4 straight ranked opponents, 3 straight ranked night games. The Louisville game, but it was kind of a fluke, right? I mean, obviously, I think Notre Dame is the better team than Louisville, but they certainly didn't play like it. And again, there was some terrible coaching there and a drop touchdown pass from Chris Tyree. I mean, I could go over all the excuses all day. It doesn't matter. We lost the game. But no, Notre Dame beating Notre Dame at Notre Dame is a very good win for Ohio State. And that's going to look, if they stay undefeated for the rest of the year, that'll be a good win on their resume. Penn State and Michigan really haven't played, anyone too impressive yet. I mean, yeah, I think Penn State looks better in some ways than Ohio State, but my gut tells me Ohio State is going to win that game. It'll be fun to watch anyway, that's for sure.
Yeah, it's difficult to take my fandom out of the equation, although I will say that for Ohio State competing for a national championship every year, I went back in the records for at least the last 5 or 6 years, and I have not picked Ohio State to win a national championship. So I've been able to keep my fandom out of it to that degree. I do always pick them to go to the playoff, it seems, and they usually do. And when they don't, they're the first team left out. So they always have a legitimate claim to be a playoff team, but I don't know if it's just from what, not that they're incapable of losing these games, but I'm just used to them winning, that I expect them to win.
No, I get it. And hey, you were so close last year to actually having a shot at the title. That had to hurt. That's so bad losing to Georgia. I mean, Georgia was looking like world beaters.
Yeah.
And especially the way you guys lost to Michigan last year. I did not think you had it in you to put up that kind of performance against Georgia, but I was definitely rooting for Ohio State in that game. It really came down to the wire there. If Harrison doesn't get hurt, I think you guys take that game. But that's neither here nor there at this point. But yeah.
All right, Rob. Anything else you got for us?
No, I'm just looking forward to hopefully Notre Dame limping through the rest of the season and not losing any more games they shouldn't. The Clemson game is still going to be interesting, but they should win out at this point, I think. But we'll see. But
All right, man.
Go
Well,
Bucks versus Penn State next week, huh?
Absolutely. Well, thanks for calling. I appreciate it.
Yep. Have a good one.
All right. You too. All right. Let's keep it moving here at the Voice of College Football. We got our guy. So everybody who's called tonight, just stay in check there. And please, no other calls. We'll get through these. And shoot, what time are we looking at here? 2:15. Let's try to go pretty quick here. Let's get Will on here.
Can we bring in Tim
we can
too?
Celebrate with Will tonight. How you doing, Will?
I'm very, very happy, Mark. Can we bring in Tim to tag team in?
Oh, sure.
To help you out.
To help me out?
Well, yeah, you want to get through the calls. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yes.
Yeah.
Since this is the USC Notre Dame matchup or the Notre Dame USC matchup, I should give preference to the winner. You guys can serve it up. I watched the entire game myself, but you guys are the experts.
Tim, I felt like Rich did pretty good. I don't know. Our offense was bad too, but I don't know. It turned out to be the strength versus strength was really what helped the Irish out. Were you surprised that your receivers weren't really getting more separation? I mean, the line did not help you out at all. But what do you all think?
Well, you got it. The right side of the offensive line is worse than I absolutely ever expected it would be. I knew there were issues. I don't know if you caught any of our show when we talked about it, but when we were shuffling, I was talking about a blind spot. I'm thinking, okay, they're just moving guys around to give them experience on the field, but no, there are serious problems, and they probably knew it since spring ball. And so the right side of that offensive line is horrible. Yeah, it does suck because it does look like actually that I'm not ready to say that they fixed the tackling problem, but in that game they were tackling decent in that game. You're not gonna get Estime down every time. You're not gonna knock him backwards. He's not that kind of a back, but they did a pretty good job. I was expecting him to break one at any moment, and they really kept him in check. But still deep concerns on defense. The one major issue on defense I had, Will, was on that post pattern you had. It just seems like a constant with that. See that deep middle. There's something wrong, and other offensive coordinators are seeing it, and they are exploiting it. But other than that, I was happy with the defense.
Mm-hmm.
Special teams and offense, not so much.
I mean, Zachariah Branch was good. I mean, I'm why were we kicking it to him on that deep? I was saying, okay, let's stop kicking to him. And then eventually it came through for the Trojans there.
Yeah, well, I mean, not to take anything remotely away. I mean, Al Golden. Yeah, who's that guy? Who's the Xavier Watts That guy played out of his mind.
Yeah, he
that
was
guy's
awesome.
Really, that guy's really good. And then, like you've been telling me all year, right? Your buddy Morrison, Benjamin Morrison. That guy's lights out. Caleb had the same kind of problem when he had really good linebacker and cornerback play last year. If you remember, we went to Corvallis, and he had all kinds of problems, and he was off. But you know, throwing the ball off platform is great sometimes. But he got Mark talked about it a little bit. I kind of agree with Mark on some of the points, but generally he does get away with those throws. It's not necessarily exactly what you do, but he did. You know, that first one was tipped. But even then, what tight window? You play it enough, and you have athletes out there, they will make plays on it. But that ball was tipped. The offensive line, the difference between last year and this year, without a doubt, is the offensive line. You know, the SC missed Voorhees and especially Nealon at center. Man, what's going on with our center play? That's where the whole thing starts. You know, it's atrocious. But
I feel like our linebackers, even though it's the same guys from last year, I feel like this year they've just been playing so much better. I don't know if it's like they couldn't really adjust to Golden's scheme last season, but this year's season, man, they've been on it. Like, it's just like sometimes Maris has the dumb penalties, but he didn't have any today. Like, Kaiser, Bertrand, and Leofau, they were lights out today. And also Jalen Sneed, too, coming in and getting more of a role this game. He was awesome as well. Very, very pleased with him.
Well, and that's what you're supposed to see. In year 2, you're supposed to see a big jump, and maybe maybe that's what you're seeing with Notre Dame.
Yeah, even he played well to number 1 ND fans' expectations.
The defense was lights out. Did a great job.
Yeah, and I mean Howard Cross and I think he was going, or is it Riley? Howard and Riley, they're both going against your center, and they were just getting to Caleb every time. But I don't know. Yeah. I just think the difference is like Notre Dame secondary is just good enough to like, I think they've studied Caleb's film, and I think that helped a lot in the game. But how confident are you going into the Utah game now? Do we know if Rising's playing?
Just a couple of things on the Utah game. No, I'm not. I'm resetting expectations based upon this. Again, I had a huge blind spot. And now I'm thinking about, I talked about the Arizona game, and I also talked about the right side of the line in the Arizona State game. There's clearly something bad going on that right side. I mean, you can't have half of an offensive line. I think the left side, we're fine. Right side, you know, the A gap, B gap, C gap. There's just issues going on there. It's all falling apart. So it starts with center. It starts with those funky snaps we're getting. I mean, it was really bad the entire night, starting from the first play of the game. You guys were just coming right through the right side the entire game. Caleb was trying to roll out of it, rolling right into another guy. I would have liked to see him step up a couple of times because a lot of the pressure was coming from the outside. He has this tendency where maybe it was from last year when he played you guys, he thought he could just do these spin arounds and roll outside. But when the correct move was probably to step up into the pocket, it was a clean pocket in front of him, but he was trying to roll out and was rolling right into the pass rush. Yeah, it was just a bad overall game for the offense. I'm not going to put it all on Caleb because that offensive line was pretty. I don't know any quarterbacks that would have excelled with the protection he was getting. Also,
maybe Pat Mahomes. I can't think.
I don't even know if Mahomes could have done it, honestly.
Yeah.
Because there was no run game. This is the thing. Everyone in the USC chat all of a sudden, we need to run the ball more. And I keep saying, and I did say this. I want to pat myself on the back. I said maybe we can't run. I said that like about 4 games ago. Maybe we're not running because we can't run the ball. They rushed the ball for 2.5 yards. SC did. They got 147, so a lot of that's probably sack adjusted. 147 sack adjusted. But I think at the end of the game, including the sacks, I think USC rushed for 2.5 yards a carry, which is just terrible. You know what I mean?
Bad.
I mean,
that's bad.
So,
well, they're at 2.8, and if you take Caleb out of it, you're going to erase 13 carries, so it brings them down to 24 carries for 112. So that sounds a whole lot better.
Well, but Mark, some of the more better runs tonight, some of the better runs tonight were design quarterback, which was kind of weird. Will, I was happy with that. I saw some design runs for
early
Caleb
in the game, and one of them got called back. That would have been a touchdown, right?
It was clear holding. Absolutely, it was just that's right, the right side of our line. Horrible hold, and the negated. I would say Heisman, and I saw the flag. I went, "Oh shit!" I knew right away, and then showed the replay, and it was a clear hold. It was. There's no room. The line play on the right side again. Terrible.
Mm-hmm. I gotta admit though, as an Irish fan, like I try to take my bias out of it when talking to you, Tim. But Caleb with the fingernail polish last year, like pretty much everyone just really was enjoying the sacks and stuff. All the fans were in the stadium, man. They do not like Caleb.
Listen, you know, when an opposing fan base doesn't like you, it's not because you suck. That's all I'm gonna say. You know, but you know the fingernail thing, I don't get it. I don't do it, but that wouldn't. I don't care. Joe Montana had a pantyhose. Oh, not Joe Montana.
Namath. Yeah.
Joe Namath had the pantyhose commercials. Like, granted, he wasn't cruising around in pantyhose stuff, but you know what I mean. That kind of stuff doesn't really bother me. I guess it does bother some people. Honestly, if it was the quarterback at Notre Dame, I'd be like, well, that's weird. But then that'd be the end of it. Some people.
Well, it was the explicit like F-bomb Notre Dame that he had on his.
Oh, I mean,
that was what bothered that fan base. Yeah.
Fair enough. I mean, fair enough.
Yeah.
But you know, you do realize that these guys say a lot worse than that in the trenches with each other. So I mean, what's on his fingernails probably as bad as what they're saying to each other. I get you. Yeah, it's poor form. And then I'll tell you what, Notre Dame probably got pissed off about that. They probably remembered it. They probably took a couple shots on him this year saying, hey, how's your fingernails? Is it pushing his face into the turf after getting a sack? So it was a great game. You guys absolutely came out on fire. You could tell they were pissed off. They were up for this game. I can't say I don't think USC was up. I think USC was up for the game, but that offensive line was up for the task. And it went downhill. Yeah, I mean, you guys, I think, had like 250 yards total, but you guys were working on a short field. I think your first two touchdowns were two yards, and was it 2 yards, 12 yards, and then 50 yards, and then a kick return for a touchdown.
Kick return for a touchdown, and then the one post route to Chris Tyree.
Yeah, the post route is just, again, that's just a Grinch situation. I'm not smart enough to understand why we keep running. How we bring I think we're bringing the safety up, obviously, for run support. But man, every game. So.
And then there was just a Xavier Watts scoop and score. I think that was all the touchdowns.
Well, at that point, that was over. The game was over at that point. I'm talking when the game was still there. Like, it was an 11-point game. USC actually is getting some mojo, and they kick off, and you got that 99-yard touchdown on the kickoff return. Yeah, you're not going to go into South Bend. USC traditionally, right, doesn't win a lot in South Bend. You don't just go into South Bend against any Notre Dame team, but let's let alone a really good defense, and the way you guys play was awesome. And give up a 2-yard drive, a 12-yard drive, and a 50-yard drive, and then a kickoff for a touchdown, and expect to win that game. That's just that simple. Yeah. And the funny thing is, on Thursday, I said to Matt, we're doing what our keys of game. My major one was, got to win the turnover battle. That's literally what I said. I had no idea. I wasn't thinking 5-0 like it ended up being, but I mean, I was thinking, whoever gets 3-2 or 3-1, whoever wins that turnover battle is going to win that game, because it's a good game.
I'm just hoping that Parker can get the offense sorted out a bit over the bye week. This is definitely a good time for the bye week, but like I still have plenty of frustration with the offense, but that's not going to ruin my day. But
we're pulling for you, Will. Yeah. Run the table. Look good. Look impressive.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm still terrified of the Death Valley game, but I think we should be able to take care of Pitt, although Pitt did beat Louisville, but I'm not going to use the transitive property. Like, the Pitt team still looked bad against Cincinnati and bad against Virginia Tech, so should be good to go.
Winning on the road's tough, Will. And again, like Mark talked about a couple of times now, you guys had a stretch of games, and it's going to catch up with you. It's going to catch up with you, and it did. And you guys are a great team. Yeah, you said it well. I am not sold on your offense. Well, I know I'm not. You guys got some nice pieces, but
like,
yeah,
I think
Parker, you guys better find someone.
I wouldn't bring him back next year. Like, I gave Golden, I'm like, okay, I didn't really like what I saw from Golden, but I'll bring him back next year and give him another chance. And he's been great. But with Parker, man, I don't think he deserves a second year right now. I know him and Marcus are buddies, but hopefully nepotism doesn't lead to him coming back.
Promoting your tight ends again. That's why going to North. I think I told you this. Going to South Bend is never a pretty sight for USC, but that was my ace in the hole. I'm like, dude, okay, this guy, tight end coach. This is our chance. I know you guys got a great quarterback, great running back, but man, Gerard Parker's our equalizer. I had no idea we were gonna have 5 turnovers and give off a kick return for a touchdown. Yeah. So I mean,
our
advantage went down the hill when you give a short field. Good job, Will. You guys have a great.
Yeah, thanks for being a good sport about it, Tim.
How else can I be? What, come in here and say we kicked ass? I mean, what do you expect me to do? But I really did come in here, Mark, if you would allow me. I'm just gonna hype a show over tomorrow.
Absolutely.
So like we always have, oh shoot, wait, hold on. You gotta give me a second. I gotta load it in. Sorry, I forgot we're on the USC channel. But every Monday, every Thursday we have the call-in show, but we try to call it our Trojan family therapy. So as we're known as the Trojan family, but we're gonna have a call-in show tomorrow. Matt and myself, we're gonna do the call-in show at 10 a.m. So Irish fans, come and gloat. We're ready for it. You guys have every right to be excited, turning your season around with a big win. May not be as big.
Is it you and Matt?
Yeah, Matt and I will be on.
Okay, I
don't
call.
know.
If I'm not,
I haven't
if I'm
confirmed
not
with Matt
flying
yet.
back home, then if I'm not in the air, I'll try to call it.
Matt's kind of said it's kind of open. He said, so if we do, if we have one of these games, like any loss, we'll definitely do it. The way we lost, I'm sure we're gonna have lots of people calling in. We had like 300 Sooners, I think, in our chat tonight. We had like 600 people, but I'm telling you, it was probably like 200 Trojans, maybe 100 random, and like 300 Sooner fans. And I gave them full reign unless I started doing that stupid Tebow stuff. But like whatever. I mean, a lot of the points that they made. It's funny, the points that they made. The reason why USC is losing, at least this game, had nothing to do with all of their other comments they've been making all year. But yeah, I mean, I let them have free reign. It was a night for people to get their little pound of flesh, and it was actually a good time. Some of the Sooner fans were pretty damn clever. I had to kind of stifle my laugh. I mean, no one knows what I'm looking at when I'm looking at the comments, but there were some clever ones. And then you have your morons. I mean, every fan base has those guys. So, but we'll look forward to anybody except for the morons, Sooners and Duck fans. They were in force as well. So maybe.
Yeah, I know Ben was over there.
Maybe a little therapy for them as well. They can come by and, I told our show, I says karma. Every Duck, I think, that has a Twitter account was in my DMs and in my mentions, right? About that missed field goal. Just pure karma that they missed that field goal. Just the way they lost. I just kind of had a little bit of a laugh to myself because they were like, "You guys can't even kick an extra point field goal." Like, yeah, there's karma for you. So. Anyway,
what time again, Tim?
10 a.m. tomorrow. I have not checked that with Matt. That might. So again, that's the important thing here. We're shooting for 10 a.m. I have it scheduled for 10 a.m. I have not confirmed with Mark, but if you're subscribed and if you have the notification bell, you'll know when we go live.
Yeah, I think I'll be in like some sports bar at Grand Rapids watching the games before we fly out. So I should be good. Should be good for that time. Yeah.
And Moose, just remember, you lose your entire team next year. What timing when Washington, Oregon, and USC are coming?
You should have.
What a time to lose your
the entire time, Tim. Just it into people's memory banks.
What's that?
Throw the slate up there the entire time.
What slate?
To promote the show.
Oh, this?
Yeah, just keep it up there.
Yeah, it popped up there. Yeah, so it'll be a good time. It'll be therapy for me. It'll be time for the Irish to crack open an early morning Guinness and celebrate. It'll be the time for the Sooners to tell us, we told you about Alex Grinch, even though Alex Grinch wasn't the problem tonight, but we'll just roll with it, whatever they want to do. We'll just have a good old fashioned therapy session for everybody. How about that, Will?
Sounds like fun.
Yeah, because I mean, again, the sun's going to come up. I messed up the quote, but I think it was McKay. He said, the good news is there's 750,000. This is back in the 60s, 66. There's 750,000 Chinese that didn't know this game was played. Well, I'll take solace to the fact there's probably a couple billion and throw another billion in over in India that have no idea that USC got his ass kicked tonight. So I'll take solace with that as well.
Yeah. John McKay left us with a ton of great quotes, of course.
Until Brian Kelly starts screwing them up on national television. At least I had only like 600 people in my.
Marcus Freeman now has as many top 10 wins as Brian Kelly did in his whole career at Notre Dame. People were tweeting that tonight. So
wow,
it's already a good, pretty good start.
Look, we can also look at the other side that he's also lost a more unranked
Yeah,
teams, I'm
yeah,
sure, in the
that's
span
fair.
of what, a season and a
Yeah.
half. So
Yeah.
there's that.
Yeah, good job. You guys get an offensive coordinator. Yeah, you will. I think you guys just got caught between a rock and a hard place the way Tommy Reese
Yeah.
left. Not that you should have been looking anyway to get rid of Tommy Reese, but you know,
Hopefully we can get like someone like the Washington State Arbuckle guy. Hopefully we can get him. But
your defense keeps playing like they do. You should be all right. I think that that's going to carry a lot of games. Hey, wait. So what's the really quickly? Who's the other corner as well?
Cam Hart.
Yeah, he played well. He played really well too. So I mean,
yeah.
So is he also a sophomore?
He is a grad student, but Christian Gray hopefully will have a great year. He's the sort of the heir apparent, pretty highly rated recruit as a freshman. Hopefully, Mike Mickens. I trust Mike Mickens. He's a phenomenal cornerbacks coach. I think we're scared that he's going to go to the NFL. I'm hoping he doesn't, but I think he'll develop Christian Gray into a great player. Hopefully next year.
You could do a lot, Will, especially in college football with two bookend shutdown corners.
Yeah.
And I mean, you could almost, in the old days, you used to build from the inside out, which you still do have to do, right? But in modern offenses, if you've got guys that you could put out there on an island, like I think you can with your corners. I didn't know he was a grad transfer, but that's how you really do
he's his fifth year at Notre Dame. He's been at Notre Dame.
Wow. Oh, gotcha. That's right. You guys don't do fifth year grad transfers, do you? Oh yeah, you do. Wait, you got Hartman. What the hell am I saying?
Yeah. We got Thomas Harper as well. He played well from Oklahoma State.
All right, Mark's giving us that look. Like I said, I'm gonna go to bed. So
all right.
So 10 o'clock tomorrow morning, guys. Will, great game. Thanks, Mark. And I'll see all you guys later.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mark.
Will,
Thanks,
I do detect. I'll say this one thing. Will, I detect a little scratchy voice. Was there a lot?
Oh yeah, I mean, yeah. I was yelling. Okay. Oh.
Most of it afterwards, right? Yelling with happiness, I'm sure. So
yeah, for sure.
All right, guys.
Thanks, Tim. Appreciate it.
Thanks.
All right, everyone. Get to the USC channel in the morning. It's going to be, 10 a.m. Pacific time, 1 p.m. Eastern time for the call-in show there. We'll talk some more Notre Dame, I'm sure, with Golden Playbook. What's going on tonight?
How's it going?
It's going pretty well. How are you?
Wow. Man, feeling great.
I bet.
What a victory. As you can tell, my voice, a lot of yelling. But wow, what a great game. I mean, that was
it really wasn't a great game. It was a great game for Notre Dame. It was a great win for Notre Dame. It wasn't a great game to watch.
Yeah.
It was okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't expect, I didn't really expect us to be able to, I didn't expect the score to be that high. I didn't expect us to win by 4 touchdowns.
I did not either. I would have said if Notre Dame's going to win this game, it's going to be roughly in the 24-20 range.
Yeah.
27-24, something in that range.
Yeah, it was definitely a great game. Great atmosphere. A lot of yelling, obviously. But yeah, it was a great bounce back win for us. Now we finally get a bye week. But yeah, there was a lot of other interesting games. Wow, I was really shocked about the Colorado and Stanford game.
Yeah, that was something else.
Yeah, it was pretty crazy there. Stanford ended up coming back, but what other games, dude? So I think. Oh yeah, Washington and Oregon. That game was exciting too. even though Washington ended up winning, that game was pretty competitive. I think it lived up to the hype.
Yeah, that was a great game. Do you have any questions for me or anything? Yeah, there were a lot of great games on Saturday. Absolutely.
Yeah. So, do you think that Oregon could still make the playoffs, like even if they?
Yes, they can still make the playoff. I believe there's only been 2 teams that have lost a game and won a conference championship that didn't make the playoff. So win the conference championship, they go to the playoff. Most likely.
Yeah.
All right, Golden Playbook. Appreciate you being here. Call back anytime.
Okay.
All right. Here is a note to callers. Don't call in and tell me that every game all day were great. Okay, we know that. That game was great. That game was great. That game was great. Okay, got it. All right, especially at 3 o'clock in the morning. Here we go. Welcome into the Voice of College Football. Talk is Pitt with a big win tonight.
Hey, Mark. How's it going?
That's going well. How are you?
Yeah, went to that game. Got soaked. It wouldn't stop raining whatsoever.
Wait, went to the ball game. Nice.
And well, yeah, I was able to secure tickets at the last minute, and I had to haul ass down to Ackeyshire because I actually don't live anywhere near the stadium. I live about 45 minutes outside of the city, and I border 3 different counties. So I got down there. Game had just started, but I originally had us losing this game, actually, by 14 points, because even though Phil Dracovic is no longer the starting quarterback, I wasn't too confident in Christian Veyer, the Penn State transfer, because of how horrible our offensive line has been playing. And, you know, I've tried to say to Pitt fans, look, it doesn't matter who is at quarterback. If our offensive line can't run or pass block, whoever is, you know, taking snaps is going to have a long day. Well, announced to me, they switched a couple of things up and moved some people around. And, you know, for the first half, it looked like, or should I say for the first quarter and a half, it looked like Louisville was probably going to run the table and run all over us, but that didn't actually happen at all. And what impressed me the most is not often does Pitt start off 1-4 and come out and make changes because of Pat Narduzzi's stubbornness. I'm glad he pulled his head out of his ass and finally bench Phil Dracovic. Excuse my language, but I'm finally glad he did. And it was a great win. In the stats for this game, honestly, Mark, were just let me read the stats for you, because it's not vindicative of how the game actually played out. So Pitt had 288 yards of total offense versus Louisville's 444 yards of total offense. We were only able to get 13 first downs the whole entire game, and Christian Veyer only completed 44% of his passes, which to me is not very good. But we still ended up winning by 17 points, and hopefully this could be like a momentum switch for us to win more games throughout the season. We got Wake Forest next week, and I don't really see Wake Forest being that big of a challenge. And then we end up playing Notre Dame the following week.
Well, for as impressive as you were tonight, and again, I saw that you were winning in the fourth quarter and flipped the game on, but I was watching so many games, I can't say that I really took much from it. And now that I'm looking at the stats, as you pointed out, if you just showed somebody these stats, minus, of course, the 3-0 turnover margin, that's what erases everything right there, I'm assuming, because that's how usually football stats work, that if you see this kind of yardage discrepancy, but then you see 3-0 the other way, then it tells you that that team that had 200 less yards, or in this case, about 160 less yards, may have won the game. And in this case, decisively. But you know, as well as I know, that you can't take Wake Forest lightly next week.
Oh, no, we can, and definitely not. I'm not saying, we're going to go in there and roll all over Wake Forest, because even I know that would be idiotic to say. But I mean, I still think we're going to win that game. I just, I'm just happy we finally are out of the losing column after starting 1-4 and, winning our first ACC game of the year and winning the first game in the year against an FBS opponent. And it's kind of like,
sorry to interrupt you, but did Louisville's best running back get hurt in this game, Jahar Jordan?
They said he was injured before the game started, but for the first couple of series, he was out there running plays.
Yeah,
and actually, a couple of series, and actually did pretty decent. Now, I don't know if he got re-injured again after that, because we didn't see him towards the end of the first half and all of the second half. But their other running back, what is his name? Malcolm Turner, I think.
Maurice Turner,
he was 12 for 81, no touchdowns, but he had 6.8 yards per carry. And so he was able to run the ball pretty decent. It's just Louisville, like you said, turned the ball over, and they just weren't able to capitalize on their opportunities to score at all. Now, to me, a win is a win. I don't care who's injured. But I'm just finally happy that we're not losing anymore. And to quote on what Jackson said a couple minutes ago, that he's not worried about Notre Dame losing to Pitt. Well, you weren't worried about Notre Dame losing to Louisville, and you still lost.
Yeah.
But it's a weird deja vu for us, because the last time we had a quarterback get his first start against a ranked opponent, we won. And that was Kenny Pickett's first start against Miami and back in 2017. And it seems like every time we bench a quarterback and then somebody else gets a start, that's when the spark finally gets going. And, I hope just Pat Narduzzi and Frank Signetti pulls their head out of their butts and starts calling better plays, because that's really what's holding us back. If Christian Bayer, the Penn State transfer, started at the beginning of the season like I think he should have, we'd be undefeated. Because we didn't really lose that much to West Virginia. As bad as Phil Dracovic was, that game was really, 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 really boring. And even as bad as he was, he still outdueled both West Virginia's quarterbacks. But we finally got our defense healthy, offense is healthy, and honestly, that game wasn't as exciting as all the other ones. But then again, I really don't care about all the other ones. I was just waiting for them to end so mine could begin.
Absolutely. Well, we appreciate you stopping by to tell us about it. And I certainly, off the heels of defeating Notre Dame and going to 6-0 and all the hoopla that came with it, thought, okay, this looks like it could be a letdown for Louisville. And sure enough, it was, even though I was not brave enough to pull the trigger on the upset pick. I certainly was not surprised by this whatsoever.
I wasn't brave enough either to pull off the upset. I even said at the beginning of this call, I thought we were going to lose by double digits. But appreciate the time, Mark, and have a good rest of your night.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much for the Galts. Let's talk his Pitt. We appreciate him being here. So we've got this nice little comment here. We've got 198, 1989M, whatever that refers to, 1989M. Ryan Day is a soft coach homie. Always love these comments. Ryan Day is a soft coach. I don't even know what that means exactly. The guy's 51-6. Can you point me to any other coaches who are 51-6? It's unbelievable. All right, folks. Appreciate you being here at the Voice of College Football. I have posted instant analysis for Miami, North Carolina. And I got to say, Miami fans or anybody else that wants to hear me rail on Mario Cristobal, I'm probably going to clip that off, send that over to the Miami channel. So Miami, North Carolina analysis, USC, Notre Dame, Alabama, Arkansas, Ohio State, Purdue, Michigan, Indiana, and Oregon, Washington. So all those instant analysis videos are there. We appreciate you stopping by. Of course, we are going to flood your notifications with videos this weekend to wrap up what we just saw, to look forward to week 8. I believe it's week 8. Let's look at week 8 briefly. Let's see what we can look forward to this week. We've got coming up in week 8. Hang on. See, when I post something like this, then I got to find it to take it off the screen. All right. Oh, I'm sure we're all looking forward to Tuesday night with Middle Tennessee, Liberty, Western Kentucky, Jacksonville State, and Southern Miss, and South Alabama. Then on Wednesday, FIU and Sam Houston, New Mexico State, and UTEP. You diehards are going to be locked in there. I got to tell you that I forget that there are actually football games on Tuesday and Wednesday. I never watch those games. Would I, if I was forced to sit down and watch Southern Miss and South Alabama, would I? Yeah, I'd have a nice little time watching and learning about those teams, because actually I should be watching these games. Well, except for I'm working and doing all this all the time, that I would watch those games because I typically see those types of teams for the first time during bowl play, because I try to catch every bowl game. All right. So anyway, Thursday we got Rice and Tulsa, James Madison and Marshall. That could be actually a really good game. James Madison and Marshall, for you group of 5 experts that know that they are 2 of the very best. And I'll get to those super chats because one of them does concern the group of 5. So we will get to that statement in just a second. Friday, SMU and Temple. If we're only going to have one game on Friday, we usually have 2 or 3. If we're going to have one game, why don't we make it a good game? And this is one of the very reasons why we need somebody in charge of scheduling in college football. We wouldn't be left with SMU and Temple on a Friday night. Last weekend, we had Oklahoma State and Kansas State. No. Well, just a couple nights ago, last night, we had Stanford, Colorado, and then we had 2 other decent games, Memphis, Tulane, and somebody else played, SMU and somebody, East Carolina. Last week, we had 2 Power 5 games on at the same time, Kansas State, Oklahoma State, and Illinois and Nebraska. Now, we wouldn't get stuck with this if there was a governing body that was in charge of college football. But what happens is all these teams and conferences schedule whatever they want. And therefore, you've got some Thursday nights and Friday nights that there's like, oh, there's 3 decent games on, and they're all on at the same time. Then there's other weeks there are like no Friday games. And then this particular week, it's SMU and Temple. All right. So Saturday, Penn State and Ohio State. That could be a decent game. We may want to check that one out. Okay, UCF and Oklahoma, Mississippi State, Arkansas, Rutgers, Indiana. Anything else jump out? That entire window, oh my goodness. Nobody is going to be watching any other games except for Ohio State and Penn State. Yes, apologies to you, Arkansas, Oklahoma, Mississippi State, and UCF fans, Indiana and Rutgers fans, if they do exist as well. But let's face it, not only is that the biggest game of the day, but it's put in a position. I bet the other networks did not want to put any decent game. There are usually a lot of really good games at noon, but I think the networks were just like ESPN and ABC, which is obviously Disney. They are one. We're like, nope, we'll just put these like marginal games. Like if you look at ESPN's inventory at noon when they show these SEC games, they're every week showing a contending team. Alabama this week against Arkansas, LSU last week against Mizzou. Every week they're showing us Tennessee or Alabama or Georgia or somebody at noon that's decent. Ole Miss, not this week, because they know they're going to get killed in the ratings. So why waste those games there? Then at 3:30, well, Washington State coming off this pummeling against Arizona is taking on Oregon. But look at that game, Tennessee, Alabama on CBS. There's your game, obviously, that's more important than any other game. Well, Washington State, Oregon, both of those teams, well, the losers out of the Pac-12 race, most likely. The winner still good at 1 loss. So they both have to win. Wisconsin, Illinois. Illinois may have something for Wisconsin. And of course, Iowa's in a position where run the table, and the table is not impressive, and they'll win the Western Division. Mizzou and South Carolina could be a decent game. Nebraska and Northwestern are awful. So that's all about Alabama, Tennessee. And if you want to check out Washington State, Oregon, that could be a pretty good game as well. And you diehards are going to check out Minnesota, Iowa. I don't see a network listed there. I think they're playing on NBC. And then we get into primetime. We've got Texas, Houston on Fox at 4, actually, 4 Eastern. Virginia, North Carolina on the CW. There we go. Auburn, Ole Miss, that's a decent game, although Auburn's pretty bad this year. They lost by 30 tonight to LSU. I'm getting mixed up with name brands. Ole Miss, Auburn usually looks like a good game, but TCU and Kansas State, I'm not too excited about that. Michigan State playing on NBC. That's going to be a bloodbath. Duke and Florida State. There's a good game. There's potentially a good game. Army at LSU, interesting. USC and Utah, excellent game. Clemson, Miami, could be a good game. Should be a good game, actually. So our night window's decent. Michigan State, name brands, I'll check it out just because of that. But I'm going to be anticipating that my 3 eyes are going to be split between Duke, Florida State, Utah, USC, and Clemson, Miami. That's how I'm going to be watching games in prime time. And then we most likely have a bunch of blowouts late night because UCLA's at Stanford, unless Stanford keeps the magic going, and Arizona State against Washington, and the Huskies, unless they have a big letdown after their big win this weekend, should be in good shape against ASU. All right, let me hit these super chats. I apologize that I'm just getting to them now. We've got Lemansky coming in. Well, here we go. Hi, Mark. Enjoy it when you use moron or moronic. I respect you enough to give you permission to call me a moron. My prayers for my Hawkeye offense are still unanswered. Well, with games like tonight against Wisconsin, you don't need an offense. You just need the offense to just take snaps. They just need to snap the ball and just hang on to the ball. This is probably what the Hawkeyes should do going forward. This is what I'm going to suggest. Maybe I should fly out there and go to Kirk Ferentz's next weekly news conference and say, Coach, you know what you need to do? Why waste the time? You could eliminate staff. You could save costs. If you just snapped the ball, you wouldn't have to hire an offensive coordinator, an offensive line coach. Well, of course, there's a reason they've got an offensive coordinator, and they pay him handsomely to not do a job. But you could just snap the ball and kneel. Just take a kneel down on every play on offense, and then punt. First down, kneel down. Second down, kneel. Third down, kneel down. And then you punt on fourth down, and you let your defense and your special teams score all the points. That's pretty much what they do. All right, Ben. Appreciate you being here. Thank you so much for this. If I took the names off the teams, without a doubt, I would be picking Penn State next week. Okay. We've talked enough about that tonight. Devontae Swirl. That's an interesting handle. I like that. Who do you think has the best path to the playoff, and which group of 5 team has the best resume to go to a New Year's Six? All right. Well, that's an interesting call right there. And I like those kind of questions. So we will say it this way. Until further notice, Michigan's the best team in the Big Ten. Michigan has looked like the most complete team in the Big Ten. Ohio State, in recent weeks, I would say actually the last 3 weeks, especially after what we saw at Notre Dame tonight, looks Michigan's equal. But we know that Michigan has blasted them in the fourth quarter the last 2 years. And we also know that the game's in Ann Arbor, which is not as much of a factor as people believe it is, but it's still a factor. So based on just pure odds, we'll give the bid to the playoff out of the Big Ten to Michigan. We will give a bid out of the ACC to Florida State. We'll give a bid to the SEC champion, which would be Georgia, would be a favorite against most likely the winner of Alabama LSU. And then the winner of the Texas-Oklahoma rematch in the Big 12 championship game, but we're leaving out the Pac-12. So somewhere along the line, there has to be a 2-loss conference champion emerge that's going to knock that conference out, because otherwise we've got a ridiculous train wreck that I'm going to love. I love the chaos. I want chaos. I want 5. I would love to see 5 conference champions with 1 loss, and then see the losers of the Big Ten Eastern Division both have 1 loss, and then see, for example, Alabama win the SEC but defeat a Georgia team that's undefeated for them to have 1 loss. See Oklahoma lose to Texas in the Big 12 championship game if it comes down to that. So they have a split, even though one of them's technically the conference champion. They actually just basically have exactly the same resume, although Texas would have the nod in beating Bama. And then you could just have a ridiculous scenario in the Pac-12 that would be similar to Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State, with a bunch of 1-loss teams, and somebody's going to win the conference. And I guess you give them, what about this? USC wins the Pac-12, but they lose a conference game, and they've already got this loss to Notre Dame, which is horrendous on their resume. So try to sort through all that. I would say the best paths to the playoffs right now, because of scheduling, go to Georgia and Michigan in particular. Best group of 5. Let me cheat a little bit, and I got to look at the standings here. So Tulane got a really good win against Memphis, and their only loss is a close loss. Don't look at the box score. Don't look at the score of the game. They played really well against Ole Miss and were within a field goal with about 3 minutes left in the game. So Tulane's got a great resume right now at 5-1. And then let's see, We also have Liberty 6-0, but I'd have to dive into the schedule. I'm not going to go through all these schedules. So Miami 6-1, but they lost to Miami of Florida by 5 touchdowns. Toledo's 6-1, and they lost to Illinois on the last play of the game. So as it stands right now, Tulane is the best resume, although Air Force defeating Wyoming, and Wyoming's had a pretty impressive run this season. So that's a really nice resume. And then we've got the whole deal in the Sun Belt with James Madison at 6-0, but they are playing James Madison and who? We just looked at that game. James Madison's playing Marshall. That's a tough game for them. That is a tough game. Marshall comes in at 4-2. So, Devontae Swirl, I'm sorry, I cannot on the fly answer your question about the group of 5 and who is the best resume right now, because you've got James Madison 6-0, Liberty 6-0, Air Force 6-0, Tulane's 5-1. Those are basically because of the weakness of the MAC teams and their schedules. They're out. It's basically those 4 teams, and I would have to dissect their schedules and compare them. But off the top of my head, I'm going to go Air Force right now. All right, folks. We've got a couple others chiming in. David, thank you so much for being here. Appreciate your contributions, sir. Very nice of you. Super sticker. And then we got David saying, Mark Rogers, who told you about Michael Penix in Washington? Yes. All right. All I'll say about that is that to the winners go the spoils. They deserve all the credit. But you can't walk away from that Washington-Oregon game thinking that Washington's any better than Oregon. It's a toss-up. They were playing at home, too. So I don't know that Oregon's not still better than Washington. All right. Thanks so much for being here at the Voice of College Football. Lock it in. Subscribe, please. Do all those good things. Hit the like button on your way out. And if you're watching this, as most people do actually, on the replay, they don't even join us live, please hit the like button, subscribe, join us on Discord. You can join the Patreon, patreon.com/MarkRogersTV, or as a YouTube member. It's only $3 a month. YouTube member, you get my picks, you get the Steve Merrill picks at 17-3 against the spread, and you join the community with the Discord. Talk college football 24/7, 365. We would love to have you as part of the Voice of College Football community, either on Patreon or with a YouTube membership, either one. And we appreciate it so much. Thanks for being here. And I am getting up in less than 5 hours. So we are going to call it a day. It started at noon, so we've been running 15 plus hours. So thank you so much for being here and making the Voice of College Football what it is. And we will see you next time.